Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Pathfinders podcast. I am Tree0311, here with I pointed in the right direction. Yes, partner in crime. And if you're with us live, do me a favor. If you can give me some feedback in chat and make sure our volume levels are correct. I've been going back and forth, trying to make sure all this is working correctly, and it is really hard to um, make sure that it's working correctly on your own, watching your own stuff, listening to your own stuff. Gandra Turtle, thank you for the compliment. I've been messing around with a lot of things, trying to learn this stuff. But yeah, we are the Pathfinders, and we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen and its development. Hence our little intro video with the Carrick and going through all the nebulous. Everybody, the rule in the Pathfinders podcast and on this stream is that every time we say nebulous, you have to drink a sip of whatever it is that you're drinking. Let's see. Iconic says, Tree, you are a little quiet. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. I'm going to turn that up to. I did hit record. I turned up the volume for everyone because it's all getting passed through my main PC. So hopefully that does it. How does the audio sound now? Are we equal ish? Yeah. Cool. But yeah, we are trying to make this work and getting everything. Okay. Says Iconic Force says better. So I'm going to go with better. I'm just hoping that Nazeris and I are both sounding equal in volume, because I was trying to listen to him and listen to myself through the streaming PC before we got started to make sure we were equal. But it is a bit difficult, that's for sure. But I just turned up the volume on all of this, or the master volume. Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and it's I have the controls for the stream are all over here on my streaming PC, and so I can see the levels when I look over there. And I can watch everything. But then if I want to manually manage my own mic, right here in front of my face, I have to do that on my main PC. And so that's why I'm trying to make sure that we are equal, because I can turn you up in Discord, or you can turn up your mic, or I can turn up my own mic, or I can up the volume on the main audio through the stream. But we're going to be doing something a little bit interesting tonight, in that we're going to be giving you a guided tour of what's going on with Bounty Hunter V2. But first and foremost, Nazeris is going to basically lead what we've got going on with the Roadmap Roundup, because that's sort of something that he and I are both super interested in, is following the roadmap, but also the progress tracker. But we also fanatically follow the Shinytracker, and there are a lot of interesting things on Shinytracker from last week's update, particularly because this last week and going forward is when we're going to be getting updates to we are getting updates to the upstream teams, and then shortly thereafter we should be getting updates to the downstream teams, right? Does that sound right, Naz? I think I'm getting that right. Yeah, because I did notice that we did have updates to the downstream or the upstream teams, at least in some. So I'm expecting more coming next week. But the Shinytracker is a great way to keep track of all that. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's usually like the two updates before. Let's see. Can't hear Nazareth nearly at all. Do me a favor, Naz. You want to turn your mic up, and if you can, before I okay, yeah, before I go ahead and turn you up in Discord. Yeah, you're louder on my end too, so you should be louder on their end. Oh yeah. Let's see. Keep talking. Ganja says, I'm not catching anything, Naz. Oh, hold on, Naz. I think I keep talking, keep talking. Gosh dang it. Sorry, Twitch. I'm working on the audio. Oh, I think I figured it out. I know what it is.
Unless they're holding something to be sneaky, we'll probably see next year's CitizenCon be something pretty interesting for Squadron. I really wish that
Okay,
this year's CitizenCon had something. So
so
was I
Nazeris,
completely mute for the entire time?
yes. So what I forgot to
Great,
do is
love it.
those were very good points. And if you can repeat them, no.
Okay,
But
so summary, very quick
so
version.
what I figured out was that I forgot to change the output on Discord. So
Mm,
I just made a note, and I'm literally doing all this. I literally have to take screenshots and make step by step directions for myself every time I set this up, because I
nice.
have to set it up specifically for the stream, and then undo it all so I could use my computer regularly when I'm not streaming.
Yep. Yep, I know what that's like. But basically, what I said was, congratulations on the 500 million or the $500 million. Hopefully that, or the Star Citizen is being able to take the time to do everything correctly, and everyone who's ever played a game has some opinion when games come out, whether it's taking too long, or it's buggy, or it needs so much work, or the content's been cut from what they said it was. So Star Citizen is being able to have the income, the steady stream, to actually sit back and say, no, when we get to the point where it's done, it will be done right. So, and we'll know when Squadron comes out if that's just time that could have been better allotted, or if it was time spent actually doing the good work. Because what state Squadron comes out in will be a really big tell to what the company has been doing for the past 12 or so years when it comes out. That was the Cliff Notes version of the entire ramble.
um,
Apparently, I've
but
been missing rambling.
oh yeah, well, So say we all, right? Why don't we launch right into the Roadmap Roundup? But before you get started, what we're going to do is we're going to use the scene. So this scene right here is I'm calling it the Cartography Center, where we hang out and we're doing all of our charting our way through all the nebulous everybody drink things. But the next scene is where we have our little viewing window, kind of like if you go in the Carrack and you're in the little cartography room, and then you go to the airlock in front of it, and then you've got your window out into the world. So that's what this is like. And I'm not a Carrack fanboy. It's just
it's the Explorer. It's our theme.
Yeah, it's the Explorer, and it's the analogy. It's got the things that we need for what we do on this podcast. So what we do is Nazeris and I, we always make a bunch of notes on whether it's reading the monthly reports or we're doing the Roadmap Roundup. Our regular content with the spectrum pulses and the scanner anomalies. We always make a bunch of notes in OneNote. And so Nazeris is going to be reading some things from the Roadmap Roundup, as well as we'll be providing commentary. But I'm going to pull it up on screen in the Cartography Center with our viewing room, and that way those of you who are watching versus just listening can also see what we're talking about as we are talking about it. And that's going to be the guided part of this episode. Is we're going to be guiding you through the Roadmap Roundup and everything that we're talking about, as well as through our Spectrum Pulse on Bounty Hunter V2. So I'm going to go ahead and do the transition. Hopefully it works. Show me my screen. Hopefully it works. Show me my screen. It looks like it works. Hooray! Look at us doing stuff and things. Look at us doing stuff and things. Take it away, Nazeris.
All right.
Take it away.
I always at the top of these posts. I like to read the intro because it is by the editor themselves. Happy Wednesday, everyone. This was Wednesday. So it says Happy Wednesday, everyone. This was Wednesday the 14th, so we're a little late. So every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks we complete the roadmap update with a brief explanatory note to give you insight into the decision making that led to any changes. This is part of an effort to make our communications more transparent, more specific, and more insightful for all of you who help make Star Citizen. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into this week's. Roadmap Roundup review. As I like to call it, R3 Roadmap Roundup review. There's actually a big chunk of information. All right, so there's actually a big chunk of information to start off this Roadmap Roundup, and it is basically what we're going to be seeing over the next few weeks. Leading up to 318. I mean, next few weeks that we see Steve is going to get 318. 3 Alpha 3.1. Anyway, 3 Alpha 3.18. Before we jump into the roadmap update, we want to give you an update on the status of 318, as well as an update to our standard release cadence for this year. As previously mentioned, we are still on track to release 318 to the PTU this month, September. We will start with the Evocati and aim to expand to more players soon after. Kind of reads like they want to do a wider PTU than Evocati this month, but I highly doubt they're going to get to it. But we are eager.
I don't think we're going to get to like one. Let's see. Wave 1.
Yeah. We are eager to get persistent entity streaming. In your hands TES or PES in your hands as quickly as possible. As the more time we have with all of you hammering away on this new behemoth of technology, the better. As communicated in the last letter from the chairman, we expect PES to remain in PTU for 2 to 3 months for robust testing. Our current goal is to release 318 to live service in the first half of November, ahead of the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, AIE. This means that 318 content related to the AIE. This will be very prevalent all over social media. The second Evocati gets there, we are going to see just the flood of leaks for AIE. So you have been warned. If you don't like leaks, stay off social media when Evocati hits it. Let's see, where was I? Which you will now notice in the detailed breakdown below. As you know, PES and subsequent technology, server meshing, will change the core of Star Citizen forever and provide a giant leap forward in realizing the vision of what our shared universe is meant to be. It is no surprise that we have had an abnormal cadence this year, and we appreciate all of your support as we push through these major milestones. And I imagine after we hit server meshing, especially dynamic server meshing, we will hit even a different cadence than 4 patches a year, because the speed and what they can accomplish within a year will change. So we basically will not have a normal cadence from this point forward, because we got 3 months ending in November for PES, or yeah, 3 months. So that's November. So yeah, that's the entire more. Blah, 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 blah. That's 3-ish months. It's more like 2 months. And then December, it's supposed to be like possibly get a 4.0 candidate, maybe, and then release
I
somewhere in
think
like
that's really, really, really
February, March.
optimistic.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm just going off the things that they've already said.
Yeah,
Like late December is like the earliest possible, but like release somewhere late February, March, possibly April, depending on how bad it is. And
I
so
think what
it's
we're
just
looking at is since 318 and PES is essentially, about a 2 to 3 month. They're about 2 to 3 months behind right now.
okay.
So like they when CR was talking about it in the chairman's letter, and he was saying that 2 to 3 months of testing starting back in wherever, in order to try and get a live release at the end of Q3. Well, here we are, end of Q3, and we're about to start that 2 to 3 months of testing. And so to me, that means that we will probably still be in a 318 branch. Well, we'll be, probably seeing it live, hell or high water, with all the warts and everything come IAE. But I imagine we'll get a 318 dot X, dot one, maybe even a dot two before the end of the year, in order to try and get it stable, because they're still going to want that full 2 to 3 months probably, and then some for stability. But that means that pushes back the expectations for 4.0.
I wouldn't even
And
mind it if they do the 318. They said first half November, and then purposely delay server meshing and do a 319 while
yep,
server meshing gets worked on, and then come back um, and do it for the April release of. So starting in March, you get the PTU, and then in April they release. So we get the Q1 update, or the holiday update, and everyone goes to their holiday break and then comes back, hammers away the final bits of server meshing, and then we get it for the Q2 2023 update. That way it's nice, it's solid, they've had all the work, they're not trying to rush around to get out, because
yeah.
we know the second that comes out, servers get more expensive to run.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
when CR was talking about having it in Evo, like at the end of the year, with a Q and a Q1, end of Q1 being the earliest that we'd see 4.0. I think with the the 3 month delay that we're looking at for 318, we'll probably push those expectations back 3 months, which means Evo, while with Evo starting when 319 releases. So like starting in April with 319, releasing end of March, beginning of April, and then you know I think we'll probably still be in 319 come Invictus launch week, but then come July, late June, early July is when we'll see 4.0, because that gives it the full 3 months and some change of testing. Um, not but it gives it the not only the 3 months of change in testing um that they wanted, that you talked about in the letter from the chairman post 318, but even more, because they are continuing. A 319 would just be an update of 318. It would be taking what we have in 318, adding a few more things, getting more stability out of PES, probably implementing the login flow, which last I checked was on the progress tracker. because they do have to have that in advance of 4.0. So 319 would be, basically a 318.x with things. And we're going to talk about what those things might be here when we get to our Spectrum Pulse.
Flow
But
was sort of it. The bars end back in June.
yeah, I think that's one of those things where they stopped working on it and they're going to pick back up on it. Because after that SCL, it sounded like, hey, we want to get this in, but there's too many things, so they're probably going to add more time to that later on. Maybe like end of this, end of Q4 into Q1. Ender, hey, thanks for
Oh,
Starjup Ender. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. 07, appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I think the 4.0 for the Q2 being late June, early July patch, that really gives 4.0 6 months to be worked on, uh, because the things that are getting worked on for 319, and the iteration on 318 going into 319, you could do with a lot smaller team, and the teams between PES and server meshing are already split. Sorry that you guys probably heard
here's a
my
great
dogs
question.
barking.
Do you think we'll get a dynamic server meshing candidate by the end of next year?
No,
No, you
um,
don't.
I think they'll definitely be working on it, but I think they're going to. I think we're gonna have several iterate. I think they're gonna iterate on static in order to get populations right. Push the individual populations per dedicated game server, to as high as they can in order to get high shard populations, in order to get good data before they, so something that way they have like a good baseline to start at with dynamic. Does that make sense?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Was it mentioned in the letter at all? It was.
Yeah, Ionic Force says all of next year we'll be getting SM out and polishing it out. Yeah, if they release the tier 0, tier 1 of of static server meshing, which you remember from there was that chart, the infographic, um, in the letter from the chairman showed that they plan on starting static server meshing with just 4 dedicated game servers. So a shard will be 4 dedicated game servers connected to the replication layer and and the entity graph via the replication layer. So that will be just for 4 servers, essentially 2 for Stanton, 2 for Pyro, um, and that will be the first iteration. I think that they're like Nazareth said, they have to very quickly um, increase the amount of dedicated game servers within a shard, as in order to drive up the server, the player population in a server, in order to get the most players onto a shard as possible, because that will the more players you have on a shard, the lower your platform costs will be, how much you end up
Mhm.
paying for servers.
So here's what Chris says in his letter. But as soon as SSM, uh, yeah, as soon as SSM is stable, we'll move towards dynamic server meshing with subsequent releases. As soon as SSM is stable.
Stable. Yeah. So I think
So I don't think they'll be playing around with the population as much as hammering stability. They might do some changes, but the goal is stability.
yeah.
And
And
then with that, flip the switch and then work on player caps once it's dynamic.
yeah, it's they I think that they're going to have to get um at least a couple iterations of static out, just in order to work on the transitions between servers, on those
Yeah.
boundary lines. Because right now, if you just have two dedicated game servers, uh, simulating Stanton, 2 for Pyro, you're literally just cutting it in half, and this server is responsible for this half, wherever they make that half line at, and this server is responsible for that half.
Yeah.
And if you end up, what they have to do is they want to they need to make it so that way it isn't just um, a simple line like that, and by making it into regions, that gives your servers a better understanding of communicating the transferring authority, authority transfer from not just back and forth one to one, but hey, I this server is in control of the say the Crusader planetary system, and it has to transition authority between you know um, everything neighboring it, the I don't have the star map up and I really should, but it wouldn't, or even every planetary body within the Crusader planetary system gets a server or something, so that way, you've got dedicated game servers talking to multiple other dedicated game servers instead of just one. And I think that's the next iteration, after the first one would be, upping um, the static server mesh to, you know, a good deal more, maybe one per planetary system, Crusader Stanton or Crusader Arc Core, what have you, and doing the same for Pyro, or maybe in Pyro you get um, maybe a little bit larger regions, just because will be less densely populated as far as entities and NPC populations go. Um, Ionic Force says Pyro's peanuts compared to getting server meshing out. Yeah, the
Absolutely.
people will make mocking comments about, oh, it takes them forever just to make one system. It's like, no, they've been slow boating on Pyro while they're waiting on server meshing. Like
Yeah.
you can see the amount of people that are assigned to Pyro and how many people are assigned to other things, and they could totally assign more people to Pyro, but it'd be a waste of time to get it all built. And then, oh well, we're still waiting on server meshing. Here we are. Um, so yeah, the that's why um, the landing zone teams, the oh dang it, what's Montreal
Sandbox.
called? The sandbox teams,
Yeah.
yeah, are working on so many other things besides just Pyro, in order to continue to make progress on other things that are needed to flesh out the universe, while they're also making progress on Pyro while we're waiting for server meshing.
Yeah, I think the sandbox team was the first in what will become a much more divided system within the Teams of Star system. There's going to be the tools teams that work on the underlying tech, not the tech teams, but the people who are building the technologies, like the
Turn on
engineers
my
that are doing the
fan. Give me a
rivers,
sec.
and then the teams like the sandbox teams, which are using those things in the subsequent releases that are coming out. So we saw that for a while. By the way, Windows up on stream. Um,
Yeah.
uh, we saw that with the Outpost, they were in development for a while, but when they were handed over to Sandbox, now they're just we got Outposts just everywhere. They just we're just doing this other thing with Outposts. Now we got overlays for Outposts, and that's even before we've seen it. So that's pretty fast. And then with those overlays, they can just oh yeah, we're just gonna have this art team spend a week making a new art set for it. So I think there's going to be, as we get closer and closer to a release, this kind of split between the people who work on tech and game systems, and the people who use those game systems to craft the game, much more than it has been already. I think the sandbox
Mm-hmm.
teams were some of the first that did that.
Agree completely. Well, that was a little
All
bit
right.
of a tangent, but it was a good tangent. Context is key, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. So moving
Um,
into what actually happened last week on the roadmap, the release view. The following cards have been added to the release view. Slated for the release in Alpha 3.18, the Drake Corsair. Everyone clap. Oh, no one's clapping. No, that's right.
I'm
It's a Drake
clapping.
ship. Never mind. Oh, okay.
I
I
don't own one, but I'm certainly looking forward to seeing it.
I will never hate more ships getting in the game. After further review, these deliverables will require additional tasks. So this is the next thing down. That are currently being scoped out and scheduled. Therefore, we are now removing these two cards from the noise view until release timing is reassessed. New interdiction scenarios. We didn't really know you. And environmental space missions. You were moved and then you were deleted. I'm so sorry. You seem like you were going to be a good piece of kit.
So the good thing is, and you're not watching the stream, so you can't see this, but I just transitioned to the new interdiction scenarios deliverable on the progress tracker.
I am
There's
watching.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. So it's still being worked on. It just was pulled from the release view for now. That means that there's probably going to be maybe additional teams added. So for new interdiction scenarios, the EU Sandbox 1 team is still working on it. There will probably be other teams that need to get added later on, but those are not available. So it's pulled from the release view. So maybe later on down the line over here is when we'll see those teams added. But this work
Yeah.
is still scheduled. It hasn't been removed or edited. So we'll keep an eye on it. Maybe it'll change, maybe it won't, but they're still working on it.
Yeah, like I said, they will require additional tasks. So they either ran into a roadblock where they need stuff to be moved, or they figured maybe release it in a more finished state than just the pirates will now interdict you or police will now interdict you and scan you. There might have been something where like we could with a couple more weeks actually make this a more fulfilling experience. So either one of those things happened. They found something that they needed to do, or it just wasn't big enough to actually release yet. All right, so getting on to the progress tracker, the much better roadmap. With
Same
this
with environmental
published,
space missions. Sorry,
huh?
here's what that looks like. I'm showing I forgot to do that. So yeah, the sandbox and landing zone 1 still getting worked on. Goes out into the end of quarter 4. We'll see if they add more work to it. I'm looking forward to these just because we talked about this before, but I was actually kind of confused about what they meant by environmental space missions. So I'm hoping that
See the
that work will
narrative
get scheduled.
SCL.
What's that?
Did you see the narrative SCL?
I
Because they
did,
mentioned what these are.
and I must. So
They're
I am one of those
basically
people where.
quests without quest markers.
Oh, okay. So something
So
you run
basically, you can
into while
stumble
you're
on,
flying around.
let's say a supply truck, a caterpillar or a starfare being attacked, and no one's gonna get a oh no I'm being attacked quest beacon, but it will be there for you to do, and there will be an aggressor and the one being attacked. So you'll have those two factions, and depending on what you do, you might get reputation for it. Either way, it's a thing you can happen upon that is a mission that's not a quest marker mission. So it's just stuff that
Gotcha.
happens without generating quests.
Okay, so like an
Uh,
NPC doesn't give you the mission or something like that. It doesn't pop up
yeah.
in your Moby glass. It's
Mhm.
all of a sudden you bumped into this scenario and you can choose to interact with it. If you interact with it, maybe at the end, the caterpillar captain will be like, "Oh, thanks so much. Here's 5,000 UEC."
Now, I don't remember. Did they say that? Yeah, it interacts with probability development. So, if
Hmm.
there's more pirates, maybe the mission, or maybe the space mission is you're being raided, or you see a truck being raided, or there's more police and you're trying to do um, some smuggling. Whatever it is, it will be dictated by probability volumes, and it's basically just flavor gameplay, which is sweet. I don't think I've seen many other games do flavor gameplay. Unless it's like you've encountered, 20 rats in a sewer kind of thing. Um, like only a few MMOs, not even MMOs. I think The Witcher did like flavor gameplay where there was stuff that you wouldn't get a quest marker for, but it was still
Yep.
there for you to happen upon. Very
Yeah.
few games. Very few games.
Um, uh, Cyberpunk 2077 has flavor gameplay. Um, yeah, it's a more common thing in open world games.
Yeah, yeah. It takes development, which means a lot of games can't do it. But Star Citizen is a $500 million game. So anyway, the following deliverables previously removed is returning to the progress tracker with this published. The APOA Santokii. Building, balancing, and implementing the APOA's medium fighter. I can't be mad about adding Xi'an ships, but gosh dang it, I'm so done with fighters. Man, the Santokii, it's been a while. how long has it been since they released the Santoki as a concept?
It's been a long time.
Um,
I honestly, the alien ships for the most part, they're curiosities to me, so I don't really pay too much attention to them, just because it's just not really my style. But yeah, that one's been out for a while. I don't know if you want to look that up. I have it the sprint pulled up in the progress tracker.
2018.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's 4 years and some change. Obviously, this only goes out. This I'm guessing this should be to the end of June. I don't think
I
this has been worked on yet.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I imagine when we get cargo ships in alien ships, I will probably be moving to those, whether that be, um, well, I guess Xi'an would be the most. I'm not gonna fly a Banu ship. I don't like their designs, but um, is um, is Gotek also Xi'an?
yeah, Gatak is
Okay, so yeah,
the
is
sort of
the
commercial
e-commerce
industrial
ones? Yeah,
manufacturer. Yep, and
I
Apoa
would
is the combat
definitely pick up
manufacturer.
a Gotek rival to a Hull C. I would definitely do that. So
Hmm.
CIG, I will buy one. I will buy one.
See, and
Oh
the other thing
man.
that's interesting is, how they talk about with the ship teams how they like to keep them on a brand for a little while.
Mhm.
The sort of the only thing I can think of is, okay, they're coming back to an Apoa ship. I wonder if they might have another Apoa ship, as far as unannounced, that they're going to have the teams work on, either already are or will be working on later, um,
Yeah.
after
I
this.
highly doubt, and this is kind of against what I wish would happen, but I highly doubt that Apoa and Gatak would be the same kind of like cadence, would be in the same kind of like do several of the same ships sprint because they're
Yeah,
supposed to be different companies. They
yeah, no,
want
it'd
to make
definitely
sure
be
they
Apoa,
detach.
Apoa, Gatak, Gatak. Yeah,
Right.
you're right.
So if they were going to make the Ryland and then subsequent vehicles, it would probably not be the same team that just worked on the Apoa ships, because you would end up having a lot of the crossover kind of design language, and they are very different companies. So I would imagine you would do Apoa and then a human company, and then whoever is working on a different team goes then into the alien ship for Gotek, just to make sure that they keep uh, their languages separate. Though I
Maybe we'll
I
see an Apoa multi crew.
a poem. Well, I mean, there's plenty of space to go. Like we
Yeah,
only have a
that's all
light
we
and a
have.
medium fighter.
Yeah.
We have like gunships. We have whatever missile boats,
Hmm.
frigates, Polarises, what are they called? Corvettes, up to
Hmm.
destroyer, carriers. I mean, they have so much to fill in for every other race. All right. So, after assessing this next paragraph, after assessing the team and vehicles being worked on for Squadron 42, taking a high priority, the following vehicles have been removed from the progress tracker temporarily until resources can be allocated. Okay, okay, Trey, put on your sad face. The first
Very
one that has been
sad.
removed, the RSI Apollo, and we mourn. And the Temporal Cycle or Temple Ranger, and we mourn. Like two things. Like that's been like the two vehicles that we've been here on the Pathfinders like most hyped about coming, and they've just been murdered where they stand. But we know why.
The Yeah.
that
The big
they
thing for the
not here
Apollo for
for
me
Squadron.
is, if the Apollo isn't going to get worked on, or I mean, temporarily. So
Mhm.
heck, they could start working on it again, you know, midway through next year.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, just imagine what other like ship work is there to do for Squadron. There's
yeah,
not a lot out there, so it would make sense that excuse me, that there's not a whole ton of time that then we need to wait. Let's see. Let's open up the two content.
vehicle
That's all done.
vehicle
That's
content
all done.
EU.
The whole
The
C. Let's see. Salvage tier 0. Let's bug fixing and tech debt. I'm picking out the things that are squadron.
Yeah,
Vehicle support, whatever that crap is. And that's it. That's so far it for squadron related tasks on the vehicle content team. So
yeah,
there
vehicle
could be other
support.
tasks. but
Well, there's
yeah,
the vehicle content EU, and that's they've got 4 artists and 3 designers polishing and iterating on various vehicles needed for Squadron 42 vehicle campaign. And then there's the US team, which has bug fixing and tech debt.
yeah, vehicle support on the US team also has 3 tech content and 2 artists and 1 designer, and that goes out till June. So as far
But I
as I
mean,
can go.
that's so I will concede that I am okay with um, the Apollo, not being worked on because we need these people to continue to polish Squadron 42 um, ships, and that is okay with me because it's polishing and iterating. It's not, hey, we have to build a new ship, we have to add new ships or anything like that. No, it is, you know, basically getting the ships that are already in, and are part of Squadron 42 and getting them like up to, release,
Yeah.
as far as game release ready, not just ship release ready.
Yep.
The
So
part that bothers me though is I don't think that they're going to do too much more work on medical gameplay unless they're going to work on the Apollo.
yep.
There is the stuff for actor status tier 2. We'll pull that up. Is, as far as I know, yeah, tier 2 is still scheduled, and this is going to be work that goes way out there. This is going to keep
It's
going for a
also
while.
stuff that
It
needs
is
to
not,
be in for Squadron.
yeah, um,
So if the
yeah. So
Apollo's
that is
not
a
used for Squadron and actor status is, there is some disconnect between the two.
yeah. It's we'll get more stuff for actor status, not more stuff for medical gameplay.
Right.
Yeah, because you're a fighter pilot in Squadron 42. You're gonna need to, there's some FPS gameplay. You're gonna need to do FPS type healing, but I don't think you're going to be interacting with, you know, um, med beds on the Idris and Javelin, healing other people, doing complex stuff. That's,
Yeah.
you'll
You're not
you'll
surgeon.
see NPCs doing it, but you will not be doing it. But this work is in there: DNA integrity, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs and cloning, those sorts of things. Uh, those sorts of things can be implemented as far as actor status tier 2 within the PU without requiring any other additional medical gameplay.
And I
So,
imagine the degradation will play effect on losing limbs and having scars on your Squadron character.
yeah.
So, but that won't be a player able to come and get you or going and shopping around for cybernetics. It will be you got shot in battle and came back to the address wounded, and fade to black. You wake up in the medical facilities, and oh look, you have a leg now. So it will be much more just this is not the focus of the game. Moving on. Let's get back to the focus of the game.
Mm-hmm.
All
And
right.
the last
Bye.
bit.
Yep. Additional focus from the USPU is being placed on freight elevators, the freight elevator deliverable for hangars and cargo, and is a prerequisite for hangars to persist. Therefore, we are removing future work for the following deliverable temporarily as this work is being completed, persistent hangars. So this I'm not exactly upset for because we
Same.
can't have persistent hangars without having freight elevators. Freight elevators, I feel, is the worst name for that. I feel like it's just the first name that came up in design talks because it's obviously more than an elevator that carries boxes. We have those in every single bunker. It's not just an elevator. So I imagine there's a lot more to do than just elevators in your hangar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's,
And
there's the doors, but in the elevators, but it's the, hey, you want this moved into your hangar or moved out of your hangar. It goes through the freight elevator, and it either comes, from somewhere, from some back end system, related to, that is tracking things in that location. And it goes back and forth. And so that's the important aspect of it is the freight elevators are tied to the cargo refactor. They're tied into the quantum economy, and all those things. So if you want to buy this and have it delivered to your persistent hangar, Well, you got to have a freight elevator first to do it. Um,
Right.
but they can implement the freight elevators for the cargo, for like the next iteration of the cargo factor, in say 319, and that way you can physically load and unload cargo into a freight elevator, um, without having your hangar be persistent.
So
You
here's
land.
the interesting thing: freight elevators are not just for hangars. So let me read the description of it.
Ooh,
Implementation of a system that can and content for players to physically load and unload cargo from their ships by conveying cargo and to and from their hangars, landing pads, garages, and docking collars. So it's not just the elevator; it is the entire system of cargo uh, being transferred between grids and between ownership. So this is actually could amount to almost half of the actual cargo update. Like
hmm
we have the cargo refactor, but this is actually a much bigger part than I thought because it's the transferring, like I said, of spatially moving it, but also it sounds like there's something to do with who owns it, whether the station you're picking up from or you own it at the time, or
yeah.
whether that ship owns it or this ship owns it if you're transferring between docking colors or garages and so forth. So yeah, no, that's actually a much bigger thing. Listen,
Well, and
I'm not upset.
it's completion of missions. So you have your box drop
Mhm.
off locations. These will
Yeah.
also function as essentially a big box or multiple box or not even boxes, other things drop off locations. Um, when you land, it says for landing pads. It's not talking just landing pads on stations, which are going away. It's talking about landing pads on top of buildings. And if you land on a landing pad on top of a building, or a platform, like in Orison, you'll see that there's the big old freight elevator door next to the personnel elevator door. And when you go, you use the personnel elevator door to go into that building's interior for mission location things, that sort of content. But if you're doing a hauling mission as part of something to do with something driven by the quantum economy, you'll land on that pad and you'll move the cargo into that freight elevator, and then it'll close its doors and it'll get whisked off into the ether, and it'll congratulations, you've completed your mission.
Yep.
It
I mean,
you
I
know
imagine that there will be freight elevators that aren't freight elevators. For
hmm
instance, specifically the landing pad ones, the outposts. Let's say you land an
yeah,
outpost, they don't have an elevator for you to go, but they will have a spot on the pad for you to drop your box.
yeah,
If it's
a
like a bigger
door.
box, if it's a stack of boxes.
hmm
So you
and
might
for
just
docking
be
collars, when
Mm-hmm.
you dock, with a docking collar on the capital class ones at stations. Well, how everybody's like, okay, how are you gonna load up the
Forklifts,
supplies you
lots
need
of
for your ship? You're gonna order them and they'll get delivered to a freight elevator in that sort of waiting room area.
I'm
They'll
noticing it
up
just more flaws in the Hammerhead now. The cargo grid is at the back of the ship. You dock to the front of the ship. That is going to be the worst thing to load because you have
These
to
boots are
torque
made
that
for walk-in.
whole. You
Yeah,
have to
well,
turn
either
all the way to
yeah,
the back of the ship. And
you're
something
gonna
that
have to
like
land in order to conveniently load and unload that ship,
yeah,
but you
forklifts
could.
that can
Yeah,
get through the docking color
yeah,
cannot
and
necessarily navigate the entire ship.
hmm but like, say if you're docking with another ship, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you can still do it with a hammerhead. But as far as loading and unloading on that hammerhead, but if they're if like the 890 jump, if there isn't a capital class hangar, then you're going to dock, and people are going to move the cargo through the docking collar back and forth. But it
Yeah.
also, it'll pop into the that sort of waiting room area. I imagine those are going to get an update, um, or they're going to have separate docking collars for you to dock with in order to load and unload cargo. A
That makes me
a docking
really
collar that
excited
is
for
for freight versus passengers.
yeah, that makes me really excited for the future of the 890 because that has a massive hangar and yeah, there's actually a lot of gameplay that can be added to that with Raid. All right,
hmm
that's actually really cool.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to
Not
seeing it. I'm looking forward to doing those. I'm looking forward to large scale box missions, which is what hauling is supposed to be. and going to tops of buildings, or random places, and oh, I brought you, 30 SCU of this and 5 SCU of this, blah blah blah, and it's a if you remember from the freelancer commercial, it had a mix and match of different crate sizes. Well,
Chris.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's everything that showed up on the roadmap roundup. However, there were a couple of notable things that happened without being noted over on the Shiny Tracker. Number one, a deliverable was removed that did not show up on the roundup, and that's the Retaliator base got removed from the progress tracker.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. It did something
I
wrong.
mean, if you can pull it up, it's not removed.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's gone
was
again. Gone
yeah, that
again.
was the base getting removed was weird, because I think that because it wasn't mentioned in the roadmap roundup, it could be one of those things that
It's one of the bugs.
is one of the bug things with the publish. And I reached out to Jake about that. Roadmap Jake Bradley. I haven't heard back from him yet.
So with the
Yeah.
Retaliator base, we do know that if it's not on the roadmap, and barring the bug, if it has gotten removed, they're not working on modularity. If it's on the
Yep,
roadmap, they're working on modularity. That is the barometer for modularity.
it is.
So
And
that's
if
why
it
it's
is
super
removed,
interesting.
that is another check in my sad panda box.
Yeah, like what ship was it that just kept getting kicked down the road again? Salvage. Oh, salvage. So modularity is gonna be the new salvage. Rip.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Let's see. Deliverables added. Santucky Ship 32?
It's
Hold
weird that it
on.
says that.
Hold on. What is Ship 32? I did not click on that. What is unannounced Ship 32? There's an unannounced EU vehicle content. A Ship 32. I don't know how Shiny Tracker gets its data. It
Mhm.
does just kind of data mine the site. So that is very interesting.
Yeah.
And I've lost the window completely. What happened? The tab just like, no, I'm out. Let's see. Oh, that's why, because I wasn't looking at the tab. Let's see. So those two were added. So a new ship in squadrons, I guess. So that's probably why they
Mm.
pulled
It
from
says Star
oh,
Citizen. Yeah.
ship 32. Oh, it does. Oh, weird. Okay, never mind then.
There are no unannounced ships that are for Squadron 42. If anyone says, "Oh, it might
Interesting.
be needed for Squadron 42," no. The
No,
ships for Squadron 42 are all made.
it's like half
Some of them
needed.
are
They'll
still
put
getting
that out there.
polished, but they are all made. There are no additional ships being made for episode 1 of Squadron 42.
Nearly everything else, 62 deliverables have been updated, nearly all of them being extended. This is because they've added more short, what is it, downstream team schedules, and they just updated schedules. So a lot of everything. Is there anything specifically you wanted to touch on?
Well,
Uh,
so the
there's a couple that
a
actually
lot of them
did.
that are extended, but some of them are end dates that says end date moved closer.
Mm-hmm.
And like the Anvil Crucible um, was moved up a month. So we'll see um, with more teams being added, because this is the beginning of the upstream team update. I imagine that there will be additional teams. Like, did they? Here, let's go to back to the progress tracker and teams, and scroll down to US vehicle content. Okay, so we shall see. Yeah, because they're scheduled out. We'll see if, like, with the Crucible, if they're, because obviously, um, let's see what did they change.
Oh, the
Okay.
start date for vehicle munching was also moved up.
So the what they did is the Anvil Crucible. I remember this now. Had not only this vehicle concept art sprint, the reconcepting of the. I want to say this is the exterior. I asked Jake about this because like either the interior reconcept was done and the exterior wasn't done, and now they're doing the exterior, or it was the other way around, where the exterior was done and now they're doing the interior. But the vehicle concept art, the reconcept, is still ongoing. But it was supposed to go into production. There's a vehicle content team sprint here, and that is there no longer. So it looks like it's not going into production, at least not in the first half of 2023. So a lot
Interesting.
of people are going to be sad about that. We'll see when it pops back in. The Legionnaire, which is one of my favorite ships, we're going to pull that one up. And so what it says, let's see. Yeah, there. The Legionnaire end date has moved earlier. Time allocation removal from. Yeah. So the vehicle content team was removed. They had a production sprint. It was supposed to go into production. That's why I was excited. It was supposed to go into production. I think it was in the beginning of Q1, or around this time, Q1 2023, and it was removed. So it's not going into production. Another very sad panda thing for me.
Oh, so
Um,
they basically reprioritize all ship stuff
yeah,
for
they
next
moved a lot of ship team stuff around because
year.
like Argo SRV extended from December into February. I think actually we'll have to get down to the vehicle tractor beams and see where that goes. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, asteroid facilities. I actually tweeted about this because I don't remember this deliverable being added to the progress tracker back in June. I don't know how I would have missed that, but this is
I feel
super
like we
exciting to
talked about
me.
that one.
If we did, I completely forgot about it. But yeah, I tweeted about it because I put in a tweet, the screenshot of this sprint, as well as a screenshot of the Glacium ring and the Keeger belt, which are the asteroid belts in Nyx. And both of those asteroid belts, the lore in the Galactopedia, the most up to date lore there is, um, talks about how there are hidden facilities used by pirates and smugglers within both those asteroid belts. Da da da.
Nice.
That's what these are for. These are being made and prioritized because they are working on Nyx, and Nyx is going to be going into production as soon as they wrap up Pyro. And so
When's AIE at? I already mentioned it earlier. When's AIE?
they just got started on this, and so we won't see anything for it for a while. I imagine this is going to take a lot of work, but if you're an OG Ionic Force, I finally bookmarked the shiny tracker. That a boy, way to go! Or boy or girl or whatever your preferred pronoun is, my friend. Um, good on you, because it is an amazing tool. But yeah, the asteroid facilities. If you're an OG backer and you remember the asteroid hangar, that kind of came with a lot of ships and ship packages. That's what I've been wanting since like day one. I want to be able to, no one knows the location. I've got the coordinates, the like 20-digit coordinates or whatever for where this asteroid is, or some way of keeping track of it because asteroids move. And I've got your asteroid base in there. And so adding new asteroid facilities to the persistent universe, handcrafted traversable areas offering different gameplay opportunities both in the interior and exterior of asteroids. So also on the exterior. So think Grim Hex, but probably smaller.
And
You know,
more manufacturable.
mm-hmm.
Not opposed to
But
book
yeah,
landing stuff.
I am I'm going to bet money that this is something that, like what they're doing with the stations and uh, the outposts and Rastar, that eventually this is something that they'll go back and make it so that players can build them as well. But I'm just looking forward to finding these facilities, or when you're exploring these asteroid belts, or having missions to go out and go to them, whether it's delivering stuff, smuggling things, taking out pirates, bounties, that sort of thing.
It is. It has definitely been said by CIG employees that players building in, on, and around asteroids is definitely something they would definitely like to have in the game.
Mm-hmm. Banu Merchantman work is going all the way out to June. I'd be willing to bet that that we won't see the Banu Merchantman until maybe IAE, if we're lucky.
Yeah. There's a
IAE
lot
next year, because it's a huge ship, and all they did was extend the vehicle content sprint all the way out to here. They have not added any of the additional downstream teams, just a little bit here and there. I guarantee you we're going to see more downstream work later on, so keep an eye on that. Bounty Hunter V2 goes all the way out to mid-May. I think that is on purpose.
Yeah. And that's just the USPU.
Yeah. All they did was add work for USPU. Yeah, it's post narrative and all these other teams. And like we saw with the work on, like, say, the inventory system, the work will continue after something is released.
Yes.
Just because it's released doesn't mean work stops. And so, being that this work continues up to this point, I would be willing. I'm going to put my money in. We'll talk more about this once we get into the Spectrum Pulse. But I'm going to say that Bounty Hunter V2, because CR wanted to get it out by the end of this year, is getting I think it's getting that same 3-month push. Instead of 319 being the December patch, it's going to be the Q1 patch here, and this is the follow-up work after its release. So we'll come back to that. Cargo system refactor end date has been extended from 8/25 to 11/17, mid-November. And what else is in mid-November? IAE. What did they say about IAE? That they wanted to release 318 in conjunction with IAE. So, more evidence talking about the cargo refactor coming. It hasn't been pushed.
We're going to see. The cargo refactor was not making it a 318.
I don't know. There's been a lot of people, like, especially on Facebook, who have been saying, "Oh, we haven't seen it, so therefore it's getting pushed." And it's like, no, it hasn't.
So, what the PES ISC went out, and this update came out, and there was actually a large amount, including Paul in this one. And normally I don't have problems with Paul, but like there's a ton of people, including some that I've recently stopped following. They were like very much doomsdaying the 318 patch after these two things came out. Like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
there's still really good patches, and we're still getting good gameplay in both. I don't know who
I think
told
it's because
them
a lot of people were thinking that there would be stuff to see for the cargo refactor, and I'm like, there is, but because the patch is delayed, the stuff that you would see in ISC is also delayed. You have to put all these things into context, and like Jared said, they're going to show us the cargo refactor, essentially on the next season, of ISC, leading up to the release of 318. There's still plenty of time for them to show it.
But it didn't get gutted. There was a couple of things that needed a little more work, and I will continue to hold out.
Yeah,
I will continue to hold out hope for 318 and a whole C release until the day 318.1 hits the live servers. I will hold out hope. But on top of all that, like, it's a single update. Relax. It's okay. Like, on both sides of the argument, like, people complain to these content creators. Stop complaining. At the very least, don't expect reply to your complaints. I know you want to complain, and I know you have every right to complain, but also content creators. Don't soak up the complaininess and use it for content, because it just makes bad content. Yeah, it was weird that like all of the Star Citizen people just lit up with like, I told everyone was wrong, everyone's gonna be disappointed. Like, no, it's an update, like every other update before. It's fine. Time marches on.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Let's see, cave archetypes. Yeah, we know that they're going to be working on those for a long time. They talked about that in the
Time.
ISC work because they have a lot more archetypes that they need to work on.
Yeah.
Chapter work, character work, Squadron 42 stuff, charge train. Not really interested. Cooperative locomotion, more Squadron 42 than anything. The whole vaulting, this and that. Cutting tier 2. End date extended, obviously, because weapon feature team. Upstream team needs more work on it. It's also being used for Squadron 42, but this is them continuing to work on that because eventually we're going to be using cutting tier 2 not only to break into areas you're not supposed to be in, but also for salvaging. Disarray, ammunition, distortion, propagation, not too all that interesting. Let's see.
Well, distortion propagation is going to be on the level of resource management. Like it is an important feature for ships.
Oh yeah, for ships, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a form of it for if they're
Anything
for
that uses
players.
resource management. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Distortion propagation is going to work with the resource management and the relay system.
Mm-hmm.
So ship stations, outposts will all have it.
Like we talked about for freight elevators, that was extended to towards the end of May. We will see if it needs additional work after that. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Who knows when we're going to see it.
And if you guys remember back when there was persistent habs or player hab, persistent habs, one of those on the tracker, they said to get that in first we need persistent hangars. So the tree that we have now is freight elevators is needed for persistent hangars, and persistent hangars are needed for player habs. So
yeah,
once we get the previous one, they'll probably start work very nearly on the next one up, which
jump
I'm super
points
excited.
extended from mid-March to early June. Early June, not end of June. So that's interesting. Life support tier 0. Didn't they say something about life support in the monthly report? I'm trying to remember now.
Yes, definitely.
I'm trying to remember what they said.
They definitely said something.
The whole C, and I know Othman is going to be upset that this got extended, but that work was extended to mid-December, vehicle content team, but they just keep on pushing it back like a month. Like it, and so that's really interesting. Like, okay, is it gonna come out with the 12/15? Like, that's about when the Q4 patch, before they go on holiday break.
Work on
Launches.
life support was finalized, knowing downstream support is what they said. The team will now work on gravity generators.
Okay, so which team though?
Feature gameplay?
Okay. So they're waiting for they finished their work and they're waiting for downstream support.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Interdiction scenarios, they see the end date has been extended, because they knew that it was going to need more work. It was released from the release view, but I imagine this is going to pop back onto the release view once they figure out if it's going to be for the Q1 patch, Q2 patch, something like that. New missions,
Backing up the whole
Orison.
C, with it having work into December, but part-time work, I still think we skin a release of it.
Could be.
because
Yeah. I
vehicle
mean,
feature team, their full-time sprint finishes up, and then you have the post-launch support of it by
mhm,
the EUVC,
yeah, could
which
be.
has been done. Like I think
It
that's
has.
how the
I want to say the
Redeemer
raft.
came out.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh,
New player experience end date
oot.
has been extended conveniently from when we thought that 318 was going to be releasing to when we are supposed to be seeing it now. So
So
I think that
if
that's
all
going to
these,
get added to the release view.
if all of these, moving from when we thought to when we now have been told 318 is coming out is one idea. They have an internal schedule. This is now their new launch day for
Yeah.
318. So that's actually really cool that we can see in all these deliverables. They have a release day in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And an
What is like
ish
Hull
release date.
Re?
Mm-hmm.
No. All of the
What's that?
Hull E. I don't know.
Yeah.
Blizzard or Blizzard apparently doesn't like the
Whole
Hull
re.
series. Doesn't like the Hull series. I don't know what's wrong with them.
No, I think he means the re, like as in when is it coming out? Why does it keep on getting extended? Um,
The longer it takes, the better it will be.
Outpost, Homestead, Independent Outlaw. Again, we're continuing all the way to the end of June. That's something that we're going to see even after Pyro releases. That work's going to continue.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that's Stanton, then
and
backports to or Pyro, then backports to Stanton, and then we won't see it next. You I think Castro was our vote for the next one. I don't think we'll see it in Castro
yep.
either.
What's that?
The homesteads.
No, I imagine we will probably see them. I don't want to say backdated, but brought back to Stanton. I think we'll
Yeah,
probably see
backported.
them. Yeah. Um, in
But after
some
that, we don't have
areas.
another planet that would have homesteads on it for the next like 3 or 4 systems.
Not for a while.
Oof.
There might be, well, on Cascom you could have
Mhm.
homesteads, out in the more rural areas, um, and I imagine they could make those, you know, just the take the work that they did and just reskin it for the style guide for Cascom, the monumentalism style.
I mean, it'd probably be homestead, military, or industrial, or something like
Yeah,
that.
homestead monumentalism. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Precision
let's see.
hangers. End date moved
Pyro
earlier.
work. The end date for Pyro system planet and mission setup extended from the beginning of March. Remember, they were talking about 4.0 releasing at the end of March
Hmm.
to mid May, not the end of June, mid late May. So that's interesting. Um,
And did we just say that that's when we figured?
yep.
Uh,
Quantum simulation, that's going to continue for a long time. They're just continuing that work, you know,
yeah.
out through the next quarter. Resource management also
Yeah, quantum
going to be in that
simulation is
workload
another
for a
one
long
of
time.
those that will just be continuing work until release, and then even post release, we're probably going to work on it still. Like
Faux show.
it's
The
there's probably a
RSI
very long.
links was added recently to the progress tracker, vehicle concept art, continuing in production.
Oh,
It was initially just going out to mid December, but it's continuing in production to the end of February, beginning of March. So, because I think
like
it's a
concept.
variant or a very similar to the Ursa, and so I think that that's probably going to launch with whatever patch is the Q1 patch.
I
Um,
thought it was bigger.
I don't think we've ever really confirmed seen it. So, but it's supposed to fit
We
in
did.
the well, it's supposed to fit in the Phoenix Bay, so it has to be about the same size because the Ursa just barely fits in the bay on the Andromeda.
That's the rover. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. They have. I don't know if this is just concept art that they decide to throw away, because they're what we thought was the links is looks like is posted on the
Drop the link in Discord.
Rover. Oh, I'm just on the RSI page. You said Discord. I put it into a chat. It's fine.
Oh, I can't pull that up over here.
How does one? I swear we've seen it with it like labeled. See, here's another one on Reddit with the same image but calling it the links.
I don't think we've ever actually confirmed seen. I think we've seen things that people thought might have been the links, but because it could have just been a vehicle that isn't a thing, kind of like the fuel trucks that we saw and like the imagery for the Aegis Vulcan, and some of the other ships. Doesn't mean it's actually a thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me pull OBS back up. Salvage Tier 0 and Salvage Vehicle Munching. End date, obviously, for Salvage Tier 0. That's the 3/18 release date. Vehicle Munching moved closer. So they're starting it 2 weeks earlier. So that's good. But obviously, the work is continuing, well into next year. So you won't see Vehicle Munching Salvage Salvage Tier 1, maybe it's something we'll see for CitizenCon next year, Q3, Q4, who knows.
That'd be a
Admin
highlight.
handling, space mines extended from July, like last 2 months ago, to May 8th. So that's interesting. I thought that who'd have thought that they were going to continue that work. What they did is they started it a little bit, and now they got a big old gap, and vehicle feature team is picking it back up in March through early May. So that probably just means that, hey, we've got this much time in between here. What can we work on? Continue working on mines. I don't think it means that we will see any more any mine gameplay around this time. Squadron would do vehicle sports, swimming tier 0.
Eventually, their keynotes are just going to not do the update justice with all the stuff. Like they always like to show you the possibility of Star Citizen, and even starting with the Microtech demo, it was like, yeah, but there's a lot more in the patch, and they're gonna need really beefy keynotes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially if we're getting a keynote for the vehicle munching. Like, I can imagine doing the jump cut in there to where you start out the game and you need to do box missions. Jump cut, you're now working as a salvager. Jump cut, you're hunting this. Jump cut, you're in the Navy. Jump cut, doing all the going through the giant pillars that they're adding and working on. Like a single guy through his life. So as they jump cut, there's these he'll get worn out and have the scars and the cybernetics and things.
That would be really cool to see. Unannounced vehicles. This one, the end date was moved closer by, let's see, 2 weeks.
Is that mid-November?
About 7 weeks, 6-7 weeks, to the end of October. I wonder if this one got prioritized or deprioritized, or they got done with what they were going to work on sooner, because it looks like this. Obviously, that's not a lot of work. There's that much vehicle content. No concept art, so it's probably a concept that they're already done. So it might be something that it was deprioritized, and they'll add more people to finish it off later.
But
or it's
audio,
something they got done sooner. But usually, audio, vehicle feature. There's no VFX. Yeah, so we'll see. I have to keep an eye on that one.
I just mean they have the VFX ready already.
This one didn't change. Let's see. End date for this one was extended a month. And wait.
Who comes out in the middle of 11?
This one has a lot of
Nobody.
work. This one announced vehicle is a lot of work.
Wow.
A lot of concept art, and
How
then
many weeks
vehicle
of concept art is that?
content, a lot of audio, more vehicle content, and that one was only extended by a few weeks. So I think this is a CitizenCon ship.
Which one is that?
It's the third one down.
1, 2, 3.
Let's see. In this
Audio,
one,
VFX. It's basically done.
the only other thing, oh yeah, VFX is there. Yeah, I think that vehicle content just needed a little bit more polish. And this is probably going to be our CitizenCon ship
Identifiable, yeah.
during the that we'll see during the last presentation. The what do they call it? The ship one?
It will either show up at the beginning or the end.
Yeah.
Because like they
see.
did the 400i was the beginning.
Yeah. Yep, you're right. The fourth one end date was just extended from mid February to mid June. So EU vehicle content. We'll keep an eye on this one because I don't think, yeah, this one doesn't have any downstream work scheduled. Oh yeah, this one. Ooh, this one's big too. Because look at how much concept art that is.
That's something I want to see. How much
That's
concept art was
that is from
1, 2, 3,
early
4, 5.
February 2022 to a year's worth of concept art.
They've been working on the one for that we assume is coming out for CitizenCon for 10 months.
Yeah.
What is that?
I mean, that's probably a good sized ship, probably a medium ship. I would be willing to bet
It
that
only
that is
has
a
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
Now,
of
do you think it will be a straight to
part-time.
flyable? Really, added to 317 whatever, at CitizenCon, or straight to flyable with 318, but
So
announced at CitizenCon.
the thing is, like, it has its audio and VFX in there, but it
Mm-hmm.
only has that many weeks, the 10 or so week or months of part-time content work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really weird. Like it looks like it's done, but it has a
Yeah.
10-month concept and an 11-month work on. Like, what was that? Unless it's a new alien ship, which would make sense for a lot of concept and not a lot of work on it.
Yeah,
Like,
or new manufacturer.
well, that's why I said alien. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a new alien manufacturer,
Or a manufacturer that they haven't had a lot of work on,
yeah.
say, Consolidated,
Mm-hmm. I
because
can see
every
that.
single Consolidated ship is new. No
Um,
two Consolidated ships look alike.
but this is a big deal to me. A ship with a year's worth of concept art. Here, let's see.
What is that?
Let's go to vehicle concept art, unannounced, and the one, yeah, 2 artists doing concept art for a year. That's a lot of concept art. There are let's see.
Is that the 61-week one?
Yeah, for reference, the Banu Merchantman was 58 weeks of concept art. And that's part-time by
That's a
2
big boat.
artists. This is 2 artists full-time concept art for 54 weeks.
I think
This is a
they're
big ship.
getting their jive back. Remember when we used to have a big ship announce every year?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, obviously that if it's concept art to then, and go back to the deliverable view for it. So it goes into production. So it finishes concept in mid-February, goes into production at the end of March. And obviously that's not supposed to end there. That'll continue. It'll be in production for a long time.
Oh
But this is going to be a big ship, and it's unannounced. a big ship that is unannounced. That's a big deal.
I'm super excited.
I am very excited as well. The question is, will it release as a concept?
Yes, I hope so.
Or yeah. I'm gonna make a prediction right now. Somebody record this.
We are recording.
Yeah. Somebody clip it. Somebody clip it, please. Blizzard, Blizzrad, please clip this. This is my LPD. Not LHD because I don't think we're gonna get an LHD. I think we're gonna get an LPD for Player Runnable. But I think that this is, hey, this is concept art, and this is in production, and at Invictus launch week we will get the concept launch, and they'll be like, it is in production now.
So for those watching, listening, and all the others, send us what manufacturer do you think it's going to be? 2, what ship do you think it's going to be?
Yeah. What do you think? What manufacturer and what type of ship? What would be its function? What would be this
We know it's big.
year-long concept art ship? Remember, like we just said, the Banu Merchantman, when it went back into reconcept, was 58 weeks worth of reconcept work with 2 artists working part-time. This is 2 artists full-time for 54 weeks. So that's a lot of concept art. It's something pretty significant. Let's see. Last unannounced end date is extended from mid-March to mid-June. I imagine this is probably another one of those ones that will continue past mid-June. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this starts production. Okay, so this ship just got prioritized because it had a little bit of concept work, which to me probably means that it was something that already got started and got updated. They're picking it back up now. But then it goes into production with the vehicle content team starting in October. And that's 3, 6, essentially 9 months production right there. So this is probably also going to be a big ship. But it's something that they concepted a while ago.
I'd venture to guess that this is actually a Q2 or Q3 ship.
Yeah. We'll just have to keep an eye on this one because we don't know how long that content sprint could go. We'll just have to wait and see when, they add any additional upstream teams, because usually they'll have EU and US vehicle content work on a ship. But then, when they get added, when downstream work comes, but the fact that it is in full production, at a minimum for 9 months, that's a good sized ship.
I would imagine that come April or come March, June even, or January, April, we will see the down teams added into this sprint.
Yep.
Because judging on the shortness of the concept, I think we already found 2 giant ships somewhere in the pipeline. I think this is just this is a ship. It's an average size, and it will be releasing in Q3.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think that one is. Nice, normal ship.
Yeah. Underground facilities, that work extended, 3 months. I think we're going to start seeing those with the Q2 patch. Or, well, because it's 4.14, that could be we'll click on it, the, post launch follow-up work, right here. So it goes all the way out. So we'll just have to see. I'm looking forward to seeing more underground facilities. The ones that we have, the bunkers that we've been doing forever, have gotten real stale. But that you can see that they're putting an awful lot of work into these. Like this work started.
And they become a regular grinding spot.
Midway,
regular grinding spots.
Yeah, this work has been ongoing for a year already. So we'll see if it's. I imagine we're going to start seeing some of this in like ISC in the near future. But I imagine it's not going to be something that continues well past this. I think it was met. Let's see. It was, I think it was probably meant for Q4 and now it's going to be Q1. Vehicle tractor beams. Sit rep. vehicle tractor beams end date was extended from the end of Q1 to the end of Q2. So this is going to be something that's going to continue to get worked on for a while, a la Argo SRV. And virtual AI service, we're about to talk more about that. End date was extended from essentially a couple weeks ago to early November. That is convenient. That is a signal. It doesn't mean
Awfully
it's coming
convenient.
out for, it's not coming out for 318, but there's that work along with other things is why I think we're going to be seeing Bounty Hunter V2 in 319. And that wraps up all of the roadmap updates.
Well,
And
there's one more thing. 460 deliverables unchanged.
Yep.
Now we're done.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, like 416 deliverable. You still have to keep track of those. Not that not a lot of them will move, but on CIG's side, they have to check boxes. And that is the entire lifetime of the roadmap has had everything we've talked about, plus another 400 items.
God bless Jake, because that's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
That's only part of his job. He does a lot of other stuff too.
So I'd recommend to Tree, since he's running the show, that we do a short, minute or two break so we can let everyone stand up for a minute, get a drink or something.
All right, hydrate break. I'm gonna go fill up my water. Everybody,
you want to kick it back to the start?
Yeah, and we'll kick it back to the starting scene, and then we're gonna come back to this same scene, and we're gonna launch into the Spectrum Pulse on Bounty Hunter V2. Be right back. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. Stay hydrated, stay thirsty, my friends. So, for this episode, Spectrum Pulse, we decided we were going to talk about Bounty Hunter V2. And, ooh, that's what I meant to. After chairman, this is where I want to start. All right. So with Bounty Hunter V2, this has actually been worked on for a while, but this got highlighted and sort of brought to the fore when the letter of the chairman came out. When was this? Back in mid-May. So let's see, 4 months ago now. And the first mention is when CR was talking about the special release cadence, making all the comparisons to the 2.3, 2.4 to the 3.0 period where there was a giant gap. And he said, and by year's end, players will be able to enjoy persistent streaming, salvage, cargo refactor, and Bounty Hunter V2 gameplay on live. So this is when he thought that 3.18 was going to be releasing right about now, leading up to CitizenCon. And we know that 3.18 is including persistent streaming, salvage, and cargo refactor. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. Bounty Hunter V2, that's not planned for 3.18. There's been no mention about that for 3.18. And that's why I've been assuming that there would be a 3.19 since pretty much the beginning. Because Bounty Hunter V2 is a pretty big gameplay addition. It isn't just new Bounty Hunter missions or anything like that, or adding functionality to Bounty Hunter ships. Bounty Hunter V2 is, if you remember how they talked about with PES being the bigger hurdle than server meshing because it required 18 new services, whereas server meshing only requires 4 new services. Well, Bounty Hunter V2 is a feature that requires new services, and those services are part of the quantum simulation, and that's why they want to bring in Bounty Hunter V2, because like with persistent entity streaming or with anything, they bring in something in its initial implementation, and then in order to, okay, this works, we got this working, and we're going to iterate on it. Well, Bounty Hunter V2 is how they test out the initial implementation of these new services that they're going to be implementing for Quanta, testing it out with Bounty Hunter V2, and then they will iterate on it and attach those to other aspects of the game. So by year's end, players will be able to enjoy persistent streaming, salvage, cargo refactor, and Bounty Hunter V2. We talked about how 3.18, because it's been pushed back to IAE, and we'll get a 3.18.1 patch to get us through the holiday break, which means 3.19 will not be the Q4 patch. It's not going to happen. But it also means that 3.19 is getting pushed back, and instead of being the Q4 patch, 3.19 should be the Q1 patch. Next mention of Bounty Hunter V2. This year is a big one for all of us on Star Citizen. You can expect to see Invictus Launch Week moving into the clouds of Crusader, the promise of persistent entity streaming making its way to the verse, as well as big game-changing features like salvage, physicalized cargo, and bounty hunting V2. Again, mentioned in there. So we heard that then, and it's been basically crickets until this last monthly report. That's why I decided, hey, we need to talk about this for Spectrum Pulse. The last monthly report for August that came out a few weeks ago also mentions the work on bounty hunting V2. And they're talking about this in the monthly report. They don't talk about everything that went on with every team in the monthly report. they talk about a lot of highlights, and some of the things that are focuses. But if they're just, hey, we're continuing to slog on with this big initiative, you might not even hear that they're working on it. But if they're talking about bounty hunting V2, and the things that they're working on, it means that they're making progress and they're achieving things. So the first mention in the last monthly report, this most recent monthly report, is under the mission feature team. On top of this, they're talking about the other work that they did. This is the last paragraph in that section. The game design documentation and foundation work for bounty hunting V2 is nearing completion, which includes bounty drop-offs and the use of virtual NPCs. Virtual NPCs. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But dropping off bounties. So instead of just you blew up the ship, or we don't even have this in or taking out like an FPS target, and killing them, they're talking about dropping them off, which means you have to subdue them. And everybody's like, okay, well, how do you go about doing that? You're just going to sneak up behind them and punch them in the back of the head? No, they've been working on the Volt weapons. The Volt weapons, and I imagine there might be something else, maybe a deployable or other things. But to start out, it'll probably be Volt weapons, and disabling ships. I imagine if a ship blows up, either the person will blow up, or maybe it'll spawn something. Who knows? We'll see how that's implemented in the game. But bounty drop-offs, you are going to be dropping off the bounty at a physical location with virtual NPCs. If you looked at the one of the deliverable for the rescue and transport missions, where the NPCs have to follow you, this is going to be using some of that same work. Where instead of it's someone you're rescuing, it's someone you are sending off to jail. A new investigation mission type entered the prototyping stage and is one of the most complex the team have ever tackled. I'm assuming this has to do with the bounty hunting missions. You're investigating, it's the investigation aspect of tracking down the bounty. I don't think this is a separate thing. But then if we go down here to the locations team, the EU locations team, near the bottom of their section, pre-production began for the new law and bounty offices, which will be found around the system and will be where bounties can be taken and new bounty missions can be found. And so you're going to have to go to these locations to get these bounty missions, as well as turn in the bounties. So you'll take a bounty, or maybe a couple bounties, and you go and you'll track them down. You'll bring them to this location, drop them off, get your reward. Just like you have to physically deliver the boxes for the box missions, you're going to have to physically deliver your bounty. And everybody's like, well, why do you have to physically deliver the bounty? Why not just kill them? We have regeneration, folks. If you kill a bounty and they actually have an imprint stored in an Ibrahim sphere somewhere with a regeneration capable medical bed, tier 1, not tier 2. If you think it's tier 2, you're wrong. That bounty, that criminal, will just regenerate wherever they have their imprint stored, and they won't go to jail. They'll get back out in circulation, they go free. And so that is the unlawful side of how CIG encourages people, players, but NPCs, but encourages players to not just straight up murder everyone. If there's a bounty on somebody's head, they want you to take that bounty in. They want you to incapacitate them, or injure them, and then subdue them, and then keep them alive in order to get them to the bounty office and turn them in. That's the unlawful side of not committing murder, because they don't want it's all over in the lore. It's highly frowned upon for even for pirates and stuff to actually just completely off you. And they don't want that, and it's this is a huge example of lore equals gameplay, Well, this is how the gameplay works on the opposite side of the piracy aspect, where lawful players, instead of just killing the pirate or the bounty, are encouraged to bring the bounty in alive, because if you kill them, then they just regenerate. And the way I surmise it will work on the opposite side is that if you are a unlawful player and you kill an NPC or you kill a player, then you get reported. Whereas if you just down them and you leave them, leave them to be rescued or wherever, it delays the reporting of that crime you committed. If you're not in a monitored area. So say you're in Pyro and you're on an unmonitored moon or something like that. If you just down that player and then you just leave them, or you down that player and you take them back to those jail cells that we saw in ISC the other week, they don't your crime doesn't get reported. And you know um, you if you're a player, maybe that character could get replaced with a virtual NPC. We'll just have to see how that ends up working out. But this is the beginning of that. And so we talked about how the work on Bounty Hunter V2 was extended from the beginning of March to the sort of uh, towards the end of May, middle of May. And basically they just pushed it back from, hey, we're going to release this with 319 in Q4, and after that is the follow-up work, the month or two of follow-up post release of a feature, like with the inventory system. Well, here we go. This is the 6 weeks of um, post-launch work after 4 to 6 weeks of post-launch work, post-release, with a 319 launch at the end of Q1. Now, in order to talk about what bounty hunting is and why it's so important, why they wanted to sandwich the release of Bounty Hunter V2 in between PES and server meshing, is because of the services that it takes advantage of. And that's what we're going to get into. Why is bounty hunting so important? It's because bounty hunting is taking advantage of really important services that we're going to touch a lot of other aspects of the game, not just bounty hunting. But this is the continued development of the quantum simulation, because the quantum simulation utilizes a bunch of backend services just like PES does, just like server meshing does. Quantum is one of the main pillars, just like server meshing and persistence. And those pillars each have multiple services that feed data into. It's an aggregate system. It's not just one thing. It's a conglomeration of different services. So we can see here Bounty Hunter V2 is, they've actually been working on this for a while. Got started at the beginning of this year with the USPU feature team, whose work continues all the way out to May. But it was ending right here. So it would have launched right here, and then this is their break, and then you've got 6 weeks, 46 weeks of follow up. Well, now it's gonna probably launch right about here, and then you've got your 46 weeks of follow up. But you can see all these teams working on it. You've got the narrative team talking about how it's going to work, writing the missions and all that sort of stuff. The mission feature team, integrating the different technologies into the system to make it work. Landing zone team, they're the ones doing that pre-production work on new law and bounty offices. That's what this is right here. But yeah, so let's get into. Actually, I need to switch this screen over.
So
We're gonna
when you were
watch. Oh, go ahead.
about the what was it, the electron, the volt stuff,
Mm-hmm.
had remembered that I saw a taser. So in
Oh
Inside
yeah.
fall of 2020, the Preacher taser pistol was shown off in concept, and
Mm-hmm.
then 2021, we saw it. I believe this was an email sneak peek. We saw it in game. I can't find it on the roadmap, and I can't find any more information about it.
Well, and if
But there is a teaser.
the progress tracker only goes back to what is it, like Q1 2021 or the end of 2020?
Yeah.
And so if it was largely done before then,
like if it's in game already,
and it's just
roadmap.
yeah, it's either in game or they'll between now and when this releases they'll finish it up because it's just an FPS weapon.
Yeah, it's a really
So
small
it
it
could get downstream work scheduled over the next couple weeks.
Ooh, because it is like the premier what's the term you used? Non-lethal weapon. It is just a taser.
Yeah.
So
and it's going to be interesting to see where these bounties end up being. Is this going to affect space-based bounties? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But we're going to watch a few minutes of the Quantum, Quasar, and Virtual AI presentation from back in towards the end of May 2021 from Tony Zurevec. We're going to watch, I think it's about a 10 to 15 minute section with a few stops in between where he talks about a few things that are they are working on, or they were working on back then, or were going to be working on soon, and why he was talking about this a year and 4 months ago. What's with the delay? Well, we're going to see why that stuff was delayed a bit, and why we're getting they're getting to it now. They've been working on it already, but why the services for it were delayed. But before we start watching the video, I just want to show you a few other things, because while we're watching the video, I'm going to sort of pause it real quick each time Tony Z mentions one of these things. So the first one, and if you read in the description for Bounty Hunter V2, it says enabling players to track criminals via a mobiGlas security app linked to distress beacons, comm arrays, air traffic control systems, cameras, and NPC informants. This will rely on various new backend tech, including virtual AI, the NPC scheduler, and security service. So, track criminals via mobiGlas security app linked to distress beacons, comm arrays, air traffic control systems, cameras, and NPC informants. So every time you hear some of the words mentioned in this, I want you to remember what Tony Zero is talking about. And then we're going to look and be like, oh, he's talking about the NPC scheduler. Here it is. It's been worked on since beginning of March 2021. It goes all the way out to, looks like the work just finished a couple weeks ago. Hasn't been changed, hasn't been updated. This is Systemic Services and Tools team, which is an upstream team. The virtual AI service. The scheduled work is about to finish. Same team, upstream team. If it was going to get updated, it probably already would have been. Also started work way back in May of 2021. It's supposed to be wrapping up here pretty soon. The NPC tracker service. Same team, Systemic Services and Tools, started in Q1 2021 in February. Finished in March of Q1 2022. Security Network V1, way back in Q1 of 2021. Security Network V1, the next quarter. Yeah, and let's go ahead and get into the video. So this is the start of where we're going to start the video at the 14 minute and 25 second mark, because he's going to, in the next couple seconds, explain why the work on this has been delayed, why it's taking so long.
With iCache now largely complete, we've been able to shift some resources around, and within the last month have now doubled the number of engineers working on the systemic functionality.
with iCache now complete.
Oh, sad faces.
Oof size large. So
I didn't actually remember him saying that. Oh,
yeah, and when I've rewatched this entire video like 3 times in the last couple days.
same.
Yeah, and when I heard that, I was like, "Oh, it makes
That
so much
makes-
sense now."
Yeah.
So they got iCache done. This is in May of 2021.
Ooh.
The inventory system released in Q3, right? Yeah, Q3 of 2021. So iCache was implemented with the inventory system, and they realized, oh, this is not going to do the trick. This is not going to scale up the way we need it to. It's not going to be as performant as we need. We are running on iCache. iCache is still, is a thing. It was, well, we're not running on it now, but it was implemented, and then they realized that it isn't going to do the trick, and so then that iCache became the foundation for the entity graph and persistent entity streaming, along with the other services. And that's what they've been working on for the last year and some change in order to get PES. That's why server meshing got delayed, is because iCache didn't pan out. But the knock-on effects is that the engineers who were working on iCache and were supposed to get moved over to the systemic to work on stuff for the systemic services and tools team for Quanta and all this stuff didn't, or at least some of them didn't. Some of them did because they've been working on this stuff for a while, but they didn't have the manpower that they thought they were going to, which is why these services have been, getting worked on for so long. They've been just, plugging away at it for a year and a half now.
Would I be able to explain why iCache didn't work?
What's that?
Would I be able to take a little small rant and explain why iCache didn't work?
Briefly.
All right. So basically, they had a really good structure. The problem was when they finally got it to a point where they could start testing it, it wasn't fast enough. You couldn't move as much data as they needed to move in the time they needed to move it.
Mm-hmm.
It is a data structure problem. It wasn't that CIG built it wrong. It was the entire ability to access the data. So basically, imagine a zip file. It was basically a zip file. But the graph data that we're now on, the entity graph replication layer is a graph data. It's a completely different data structure. And imagine that as an open XML file. Like it's all already there. You just got to click on it. It's all, or not click on it, but it's all already there. You don't have to unzip it. You don't have to load into anything. All there. That's what the graph is. It's just fast. And iCache just didn't have that speed. So when you went to, let's say, load into a planet, you gotta wait possibly several frames for all that data to actually get accessed.
Yeah. Well,
and for server meshing,
like
when
why
the
when
server,
they implemented with the inventory system, and it's why the inventory system was slow and laggy. Like it worked,
even when you're
but
going to a
go
landing zone.
yeah. Anytime
Right.
it's streaming in entities, streaming in things from the cache, it would be it was better than what we had. It wasn't good enough.
Yeah. So imagine a server size, right? The entire server says, "Oh, I need to take authority over Crusader now." All of those items need to be called in the entity structure. Whatever, if either that's a cache or a graph, the entire server needs to say, "Okay, I need to call all of these to make sure that I see where they all are." With the cache function, it would have taken, in data terms, forever. With the graph system, it was just, that's where they are. Done. Got it. And that's one of the things they mentioned at I don't know if it wasn't this one. I think it was the year after this presentation where they actually showed like the graph and all the things it connects to. They really pressed like all the data is so easy for computers to understand and to get to. It is fast.
Yeah.
And that's why everything that Tree has been talking about these delays because of it, is because the data structure itself, the core data structure, something CIG did not build. They just used an existing structure, because inventing data structures is not something CIG does.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, they needed they have way too much data to move that
Yeah.
it overpowered their original thoughts.
Yeah, it was not going to be performant enough, and certainly not able to scale to the size that Star Citizens is going to be. But continuing on,
We're now in the early stages of a number of critical new services, including everything from the air traffic control service that's required for server meshing to the
early stages. So this is, I showed you on the progress tracker how they had all those services that they've been working on, for like a year and a half now. They're in their early stages, but instead of those things getting done sooner rather than later because they're adding more resources, they had to keep the people who are already working on them, and other people had to keep working on, instead of coming off of iCache, they moved on to persistent entity streaming, and the entity graph and replication layer and all that. But he talks about air traffic control service. That's on the progress tracker. That's actually done. But things that are required for server meshing, all these services that are on the back end are things that the server meshing utilizes, that Quantum utilizes. That's why it's server meshing, because it's a web of not only the servers but all also the services that can talk to the servers and give them the information they need.
NPC scheduler that will enable dynamic populations, to the virtual AI service that is necessary for the next major feature I'm going to discuss.
NPC scheduler, virtual AI service.
Star Citizen's AI architecture is broken up into 3 distinct levels. The high-fidelity characters that you see in the game execute subsumption logic on a server, and this is far and away the most computationally expensive of the 3 types of AI. It's got a similar sense-think act cycle as the other AI, but because you can see the NPCs as they execute their tasks, there's often little to no potential for cheating or simplification. Something as simple as sitting in a chair requires a lot of item searching, animation, raycasting, collision detection, and more. This is a problem because in Star Citizen we're trying to simulate entire solar systems, and we can't afford to execute this kind of expensive logic for tens of thousands of characters that players can't even see. So we do what many games do and temporarily suspend any AI that's not in proximity to a player. This creates another roadblock, though, because you can't effectively simulate an economy when portions...
You want to pause a second?
Yep.
That pausing, for those who know, is what is breaking. That's why we have NPCs standing on chairs, is that pause.
Mm-hmm.
That's the entire bug. Because you pause the AI when no one's around, you play it, and then the NPC does not remember that it was sitting down, that they fixed like 50 times by now. Most of the fixes have been in, but the pausing of the AI and the replaying of it is the reason we get these character NPCs standing on things.
Let's see, where is it? The NPC scheduler service is essentially persistent entity streaming for NPCs. So it streams them in and out of existence based off of the scheduler. The NPC scheduler is meant to add and remove NPCs to the game, dynamically spawning them into and out of the verse based on NPC archetype, maximum number of NPCs in a given area, and the probabilities of those NPC archetypes. So they will stream NPCs in and out based off of whether there's someone there. Just like if the server will stream entities in and out whether there's a player there. Same thing for NPCs. And then the NPC tracker service tracks and records their actions. So this is the thing, along with the NPC scheduler, that will make it so that way the NPC state is recorded appropriately when it gets streamed in or streamed out, and then that way when they get streamed back in, they don't stand on a damn chair. That's why when everybody's like, oh, why don't they fix this? Why don't they fix this? They're fixing it. They're working on the system, the service that will do this and fix it. That is supposed to. There's going to be bugs, but it's supposed to fix it permanently. They didn't want some just to hack. They fixed the issues when it came to server performance as best as they could, so that way, when things streamed in and out, they streamed in appropriately, but they couldn't fix it completely. They couldn't get all the edge cases. That's why these problems keep on popping back up. But these systems, these services on the back end, just like persistent entity streaming, are what will make it so that way NPCs stream in and out appropriately, just like persistent entity streaming and the entity graph and the replication layer is what will make it so that way entities stream in and out appropriately, and don't get all borked. The state is saved. As they've talked about serialized variables. Those serialized variables are what make it so that way the entity's state is saved appropriately. Same stuff for NPCs.
Portions of it are constantly being shut down and restarted, and it's the fundamental reason why quantum exists. Merging these two AI extremes, subsumption and quantum, solves our basic problem. NPCs look and act exactly as you'd expect when you can see them, and the universe's economic wheels always remain in motion. There's one major flaw, however, with this solution. The heavyweight subsumption NPCs that you can see and interact with don't execute any AI logic when you're not around, and thus they're severely limited in what they can do and when they can do it. Solving this issue is the responsibility of a middle tier of systemic logic that I call virtual AI. Virtual AI allows virtual NPCs, VNPCs for short, to seamlessly transition back and forth between the fully realized and physical world of subsumption and a far more efficient intangible back-end ether where they retain the ability to interface with elements of the systemic architecture just like a player. This technology is going to unleash a lot of new and exciting gameplay, but it's going to take more than a few sentences to properly explain what I'm talking about, so let's walk through it all in more detail. This is the Stanton solar system. You can see the 4 planets, ArcCorp, Hurston, Microtech, and Crusader. I'm going to zoom into the Crusader planetary area, and you can see its 3 moons, Yela, Daymar, and Selen, and the space station Port Olisar. You can imagine looking at that station, hundreds of NPCs going about their lives.
There's still audio coming through. I don't know why there's a delayed echo. Can you
Because
guys...
I'm having it locally because I can't hear your thing. Or not your thing. I don't have the stream audio.
I can hear it, and I can see it going on to the stream. I just don't know what the source is. But the delayed echo is really quiet.
Yeah, no, because it's coming from my mic.
Oh.
Hold on, let me...
Because you're not wearing headphones?
Because I'm not wearing headphones because I'm like a noob and haven't ever streamed before and don't know how to stream.
What a noob. Okay, I thought it was on my end. I was like, no, I checked on... Oh,
no,
Nazeris.
Not
You're going to give me migraines.
I'm
so glad that I'm not losing my mind. Okay.
No, I'm so sorry, stream, and specifically podcast people. I know you appreciate a more audiophile experience.
Well, at least it was super quiet. It was barely noticeable. I thought I was losing my mind because I could only hear it here and there. So what he's about to do is he's going to demonstrate what we just talked about with the tracking of the NPCs, the streaming in and out of the NPCs, tracking not only where they are, but tracking their actions. It's a incredibly interesting and complicated system. If you haven't watched this video or you haven't watched it in a while, I suggest you go back and rewatch it in its entirety, because we're just going to watch the segment that's relevant to the Bounty Hunter V2 and the way that it's going to utilize these services. But there's a lot more information on this in this video that's relevant to the quantum economy and what they're working on. And Nazeris, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there is anything on quantum for CitizenCon, right? Do you want to look that up real quick? Because I can't remember, but I remember thinking, I'm surprised that they don't have anything for it. But I wouldn't be surprised with all this stuff, because the services that we're working on for quantum isn't just these ones that they're, is going to be mentioning briefly here. There's other stuff related to quantum that they are working on alongside these things, and that they're making really good progress on, at least pertaining to the progress tracker. And we can also sort of gauge that progress because we know that they just added, it was in 317, right? 317.0 is when they added in quantum tracking. It's repair and refuel, right, as the commodities? Yeah. And it was with 316, or was it 315? It was one of the two. I want to say it was 316 is when quantum took over the refineries. So when there's a queue, a long queue and a long wait, or it's going to be a while before your refinery job is is finished, but another refinery doesn't have as long of a queue. That's because of Quantum. Quantum is actually managing that, and there are actually NPCs, in the back end Quantum economy interacting with those refineries and taking up spots in the queue. You just can't see them, but they are there. Eventually, with the systems in place, you will actually start to see them. If you're in that area, you'll see them coming and going, see the ships coming and going. But yeah, that's what Quantum is doing. But if they just added something in 3.17, we're still in 3.17 too, and they just added stuff in 3.16 just before that, which he's going to talk about here. He talks about later in the video. It means that this is, if this was May and 3.16 had the refinery stuff that he mentions in this video, 3.17 had the refuel and repair stuff that he mentions in this video. It means that the other stuff that he talks about later on in the video that we're not going to watch, but I encourage you to watch it, is in the near horizon. That's what's coming up next.
No, there's nothing on anything quantum related. There is pyro, investigation missions, underground buildings, multiple speeds, new Lorville, resource management system, and ships.
I'm going to make another prediction, and that we
very little.
We will see another Tony Z Quantum presentation. We'll get an update within the next 6 months. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something that we got, hey, here's something for you to chew on during the holiday break.
Yeah.
This is how you think of the universe, always in motion, always changing, always real, regardless of whether you're actually looking at it or not. As I mentioned, though, that's an illusion. We can't afford it. When you're not looking, the server deactivates and unloads a lot of unnecessary baggage, but a wide assortment of backend services retain knowledge of everything that really matters and provide an active interface to those systems. NPCs outside of landing zones are treated differently. Quantum accumulates statistical information for where NPCs should reside and what they should be doing from its quanta, which allows us to determine how often you should see a pirate or what a freighter you run into should have in its cargo hold. These areas are called probability volumes, and the important thing to note is that the NPCs they create are ephemeral. They pop into existence for a brief moment so that the area you're viewing looks like what Quantum says it should, and once they're sufficiently far from any players, are completely and forever destroyed. I'm going to add a player here, which you can see off to the left. As they pass by Daymar, they're in range of a probability volume that, eventually, decides they should encounter a pirate. So, a pirate is created and engages the player, and after a bit, the player decides that they're outmatched and decides to run. Once they're sufficiently far from that NPC, it's destroyed. It doesn't persist in any fashion, and you'll never see them again. The player continues traveling to Port Olisar, and the translucent green wireframe indicates that the area isn't loaded on the server, and thus the subsumption AI isn't active. I'm going to add a VNPC in a moment, but first let's quickly recap what makes them so different. VNPCs always execute some form of AI logic, regardless of whether or not they are in proximity to a player. Virtual AI is extremely lightweight and computationally efficient, stripping out all of the expense related to visuals and unnecessary details, yet retains the full ability to interact with the game in the ways that truly matter.
Let's see. Wait, yeah, there it is. Virtual AI, VNPCs. This is what he's talking about. That they've been working on since when he was talking about it, like it's when they got started on it. And here we are now. And this is an upstream team, which means that their work is scheduled out like a year in advance. Here we are.
Virtual AI executes within a backend service and can thus easily be scaled and doesn't put any load on the...
What's that?
Super excite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's... Like, PES is super cool. It should make servers more performant, and it should make a lot of things with state, work better and eventually be less bug-free. But this kind of stuff is the simulation of the verse that is what will make the universe feel alive.
Yeah,
it's
much like they said, like it's a foundational technology. Like, yeah, a concrete slab will hold your house up, but the color of the walls is much more important to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So
these VNPCs are the things that the virtual AI is what quanta virtual AI, subsumption AI, this is what will make the universe feel alive, because they're still running around doing things even when you can't see them, and then once you can see them they become subsumption AI, and that's what hey, you drop out of quantum in front of Port Tressler. Well, as you're approaching quantum, maybe yeah, maybe no one else is at Port Tressler, for some reason the server's dead. So all those AI coming and going aren't actually physicalized, but as you get closer, the server's like, okay, there's an actual player coming. We need to physicalize these things, and so those virtual AI will turn into subsumption NPCs, and then you'll actually see them, and there will be ships coming and going, doing the tasks that the virtual AI is telling them to do.
yeah, setting
That's
that
cool.
scene that we've all been looking for with coming to a station and there's just traffic. Going to a
Yeah.
landing zone and there being traffic.
Yeah, everybody is
Not like
all interested
you're the only
in
person.
yeah, everybody's interested in player counts. Forget player counts. The player count isn't what is going to make the universe feel alive. If the um if the player count in a server is 100 and the NPC count is 1,000, that is what's going to make that area feel alive. And that's just the beginning. Like 1,000 NPCs running around Stanton doing what players would be doing, will make it feel that much more interesting. And they
It'd
are
be much more interesting to go to a bunker and not see a player, but see a detachment of Ninetails or
yeah,
Nova Riders. Like they'll be out there now. They won't just be at POIs. They'll be doing stuff.
yeah. And it
I mean,
isn't just a
not for the first release. Let's try to like set expectations here. Not for the first release,
oh yeah,
but that is what this stuff does. Is
yeah.
it makes story beats and life in the verse happen.
Yeah, and this tech, this aspect of quantum is going to be is planned to be implemented like that. They reference Bounty Hunter V2 in the same sentence as PES because it is as crucial to PES and server meshing, um, even though it's a gameplay feature, a gameplay mechanic. It's what it represents that's actually important, not the bounty hunter part, but the the different services that I just showed you. And he's going to talk about those more.
servers. VNPCs can seamlessly transition back and forth from lightweight, back-end-driven AI entities to full-blown subsumption-driven NPCs, and are thus indistinguishable from an NPC that really did execute expensive subsumption logic all the time. Lastly, VNPCs gradually build up their own unique histories as they live out their lives. They evolve. Okay.
They evolve. Their actions are tracked. NPC tracker service tracks and records the actions of players' NPCs. In turn, bounty hunting gameplay will use this service to expose the actions taken by outlaws so they can be tracked by bounty hunters. So their actions, which we're going to see here in a little bit, that are tracked, are what will get fed into the security network and thus the app that you will use in order to track bounties, be they player or NPC.
So, back to the example. Once the player gets close enough to Port Olisar, that area is streamed into existence, loaded onto a server, and the NPCs initialized to resume whatever they should be doing at that time of day. Now I'm going to introduce a VNPC pirate near the player, and they're going to immediately attack. After a few moments, the VNPC comes out ahead in this battle, and the player is killed. Because their crime was committed in range of an active comm array, it's recorded in their character history, along with the time and location of the felony.
Tracker service. This is tracking you, and then it gets recorded. And then a bounty hunter is going to get notified. They'll be able to track this.
An upcoming tracking app will allow you to access information like this if you've registered with the local authorities, so that the digital footprints players and VNPCs leave behind can be tracked. This VNPC's name is Dragon, and since they're now wanted in this jurisdiction, the comm array has affixed a real-time marker to his position. With the only player in this area dead, the server now streams Port Olisar and the comm array out, but as I previously noted, VNPCs aren't destroyed like a regular NPC created from a probability volume, and their logic isn't suspended like an NPC at a landing zone. Instead, VNPCs simply transition from their physicalized state, where authority over their actions is controlled by subsumption logic executing on a server, to their native ethereal state, where their virtual AI executes on the back end. Dragon now begins to exit the area, and the comm array continues to track his position until he passes out of range, at which point the real-time information converts to a last known position report. He's decided that he needs money and he's a bit risk-averse, so he elects to head all the way out to Yellow, where there are quite a few transport freighters carrying valuable ore and little in the way of security. Okay, Dragon has arrived at Yellow's asteroid field and has now crossed back into range of another active comm array, so his real-time position is now once again being reported as indicated by both the character history and the tracking marker. There aren't any players in this area, and thus none of this is streamed onto a server. Everything you're seeing is a result of a variety of different services communicating with one another.
So because he left one monitored area and went to another monitored area, essentially your app is going to let you know, hey, this person that you have a bounty for just popped up over here. And maybe you're all the way over at Microtech. You're like, oh, I have to go all the way over there to track them down. But that's the cat and mouse gameplay of, okay, you're going to a monitored area. You want to, get out of that monitored area as quickly as possible or not remain, because the longer you're in that monitored area, the sooner the more likely that someone, be an NPC bounty hunter or a player bounty hunter, is going to make their way there to try and track you down. And it's, the whole trying to, stay one step ahead of the law. That's what this is. If you're a pirate player or and this doesn't even have to be pirates. This could be a smuggler, anyone who's committed a significant enough crime to warrant a bounty or warrant law enforcement coming after you. You're going to be staying ahead. But that's why we have all these comm arrays, so that way you can have this cat and mouse staying ahead of the law gameplay. And that's going to be a lot of the big difference between what goes on in Stanton and what goes on in Pyro. Pyro isn't going to have this network of comm arrays for surveillance. But what it will have is this one. Pyro will have NPC informants. Might even have some of these other things. You'll probably still have distress beacons. They won't get. I imagine with distress beacons, they won't be relayed via comm arrays. So like you'll put out a distress beacon, it'll just take longer for it to propagate. But it'll still report that, hey, I was at this position and was attacked by this person. And so whereas piracy in a lawful system is hard mode, is very difficult, versus piracy in an unlawful system is easier. Bounty hunting in Stanton is going to be pretty easy. That's like the starter system for bounty hunting. But bounty hunting through Pyro, where you don't have comm arrays, we might have air traffic control systems. I imagine they'll still be there, but you won't get that information. You'll only get that information reported to you if you have the right reputation. So if your pirate that you're tracking goes and attacks a rival station, but you have good reputation with that rival faction that controls that station, they'll alert you, hey, these guys are here. That could be how that works. But if you don't have good reputation, you won't get that information. If you and if you're like, oh, you're just making stuff up, no, go back and read. I think it was the Clean Shot post from a couple months back. It's the most recent Clean Shot lore post, where it talks about having to maintain reputation with different factions in order to get information. Lore equals gameplay. That's why it's important to read the lore, because then you'll know the narrative team writes this stuff, and this is the stuff that they write. They don't paint the game designers into a corner, but they just sort of lay out the broad strokes, and then the game designers implement it with this stuff. The narrative team just says, yeah.
It didn't always used to be that way, but in recent history, with a lot of the newscasty sort of posts, it has been. With a lot of the adventure stories, not so much. Those are in lore fictions.
Yeah,
But with the newscasts, like the clean shot, what was the booty call that we just had the other day?
clean shot, booty call, the ones that are the small Tuesday posts that you get. If you go way back, they're much more vague. But now that we're much closer in, there's a lot more. It's nuanced, but it is definitely there as far as the lore equals gameplay. But even back in the day, like the serialized fiction that you get in the jump points, that was just laying out broad strokes for what the universe was sort of going to feel like without laying out gameplay elements. But the gameplay
that was much more feel.
Yeah, they are there in the lore posts. Like even the one this last week where they're talking about superstitions from Booty Call.
Yep.
That's going to be in the game. How the gameplay designers implement that, is up to them. But hey, if you know this from the lore, it will influence it. It makes it into the game, and it will influence how you play the game. It will influence what decisions you make. But back to the presentation. Nazzy, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, not currently.
VNPCs trigger probability volumes just like players, and yellow shows that there's quite a bit of freighter traffic in this area. So, Dragon won't have to wait very long before he generates an encounter. There's one. Dragon just caused the creation of a freighter, which itself becomes a VNPC so that it can react to what's happening via its own virtual AI. Dragon now engages the freighter. He starts firing on it. He's still within range of an active comm array, and thus this latest crime is added to his character history. He's now wanted for both murder and piracy, and the bounty on him just jumped from 6 to 10,000 UEC. Increasing the size of their rap sheet and the price on their head is one of the simplest forms of VNPC evolution, and over time we'll look to add additional ways for VNPCs to grow and increase their influence, from recruiting followers in an attempt to become a shipping magnate or a crime boss to offering their own missions.
This is how distress beacons become systemic and are generated randomly via probability volumes instead of just they randomly get added into the game and are run on the dedicated game server.
Yeah,
the captain of that
this is basically the server playing with little toys on the floor, like, I'm a pirate now. Oh yeah, I'm afraid I'm gonna attack you now.
Yeah, the anthropomorphism of Skynet.
Yeah. It is just so cool that to solve the problem of evolving NPCs and continuing, he's gonna talk about what they can become in a minute. Well, he just did a little bit, but what they can become to the player. The server has to play the game as well with a whole bunch of virtual NPCs, and it's just
the server is having more fun than we are.
Fun, no, but they're definitely getting a lot more time in than we are.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just, this is the level of technology that Star Citizen gets. No one, I would love to know if anyone else in the entire game industry has ever tried to do something like this. The last person that I've known about that tried to do this was Shadows of Mordor and Shadows of War with the Nemesis system. But that was it cached what interactions you had and what the outcome was. Basically, X NPC had Y outcome. So next time you show up, use line Z. So if, let's say, Orc 1, called Steve kills you, then next time you see Steve, he's going to say, remember when I beat you? I'll do it again. Or let's say you beat Steve in the first encounter. You find Steve again, and now he just got this giant slash across his face. But he's been sewn together so he can still fight. And now he's even more determined to hit you. Maybe he can't see as well or something like that. They had that kind of variation with the evolving NPCs. But this is an entire life for these NPCs, not just caching interactions and throwing you back the results. It's whole lives. This, no one's been around this NPC for, a half an hour, and he's been doing stuff. So it's just, this is the level of
why is it taking so long? Why does it cost so much money? This.
This.
It's not simple. Simple
This is
stuff
the
is
level
cheap
of the
and gets
world.
done quickly. This is not
Simple gets you Cyberpunk releasing the state it did, Battlefield 2042 getting released in the state it did. I was gonna leave it at release, but no, getting released in the state it did. I've heard from Lowell
Starfield being a
Keppitt.
single player game instead of multiplayer.
Sag. Like basically pick any AAA game from the past 5 years. They have the money to not, and so they're going to not.
Yeah, they want to do it better. They don't want to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. This is what they're doing. This is way more interesting, way more dynamic than anything else. This is the R&D that they always talk about that they're doing. And yeah, it takes a long time, but in order to have something with this level of, fidelity and immersion, you get what you pay for. We are paying for something great.
And just as like a little ear note. I don't remember what they're called. VR is also coming. So that's just, I'm sorry, that VR is going to change the game as well. It truly is.
All right. Continuing on.
Raider isn't going to surrender so easily. He's broadcast a combat assist service beacon that players can choose to accept, and he's offered a 3,000 UEC reward for his protection. Unfortunately for him, he's pretty heavily outmatched, and he's quickly destroyed, causing the service beacon to expire before anyone can come to his aid.
Service beacon expires. Ship is destroyed. Ship is now salvage.
I hadn't thought of that
Bits
before.
of information like this are fed back to Quantum, and in sufficient quantity,
Yeah, we're
will
not
sorts of
talking
things
anywhere near like where we're at here.
Yeah, the salvage missions that we're going to be getting in 318 aren't going to be using this, but this is how salvage and this is how rescue missions, are going to be generated in the future. It'll be a probability volume that says, okay, ship was disabled, and people need to be rescued. Ship was destroyed. People were all killed. It'll all just be probabilities whether what it ends up being. And so that's how you're going to have the dynamism of the missions going forward for all the different professions that are involved. Blizzard, I am paying for sheet deformation levels of fidelity. Yes,
I made an entire video on why we need sheets.
Yeah, I want my in-game character to have the same stretchy bamboo sheets that I have in real life, because he deserves nothing less.
change.
More importantly,
how much
to see
security
other people have them. There's just something about beds that the game industry just hates inherently. And like I said, I made an entire video on it. We absolutely need sheets. Like I am still curious, like what CIG's plan is with we'll call it sheet gameplay.
All right, continuing.
patrol missions in that area pay, what transports that have to travel through that area will demand as a risk premium, and how much a ship in distress will offer for someone to come to their aid. The freighter's destruction has left some debris and possibly a few items of value, so if a player had already been en route, they might arrive to find the aftermath.
See? This is where salvage comes from. This is, where that gameplay comes from.
Another murder has now been attributed to Dragon, and the bounty on him just once again jumped, this time from 10 to 14,000 UEC. He took a bit of damage from that encounter and is eventually going to need some repairs. A harder working pirate might look to plunder a few more freighters before heading back, but Dragon's personality attributes indicate that once he's got enough cash to cover the basics, he's more interested in drinking and gambling than piracy. So he leaves the area, and once again the real-time location tracking ceases once he's out of range of the comm array. He's heading back to Port Olisar, which is the closest location that has everything he wants. A fence to sell his stolen goods, shops to repair and restock his ship, and a bar where he can spend the remainder of his cash. The comm array near Port Olisar has been disabled, which means that Dragon's position isn't updated upon approach. The area remains devoid of any players, and thus it's still not streamed into memory. Dragon can therefore remain in his ethereal state and avoid a lot of computational expense related to maneuvering his ship, but he still needs to interface with the air traffic control service to request
Interface with the air traffic control service. So someone disabled the comm array. for whatever reason. So he's not getting tracked by this as he approaches Port Olisar. But then when he goes to land, because it's a lawful station and everything like that, they will report that to that backend system, the NPC tracker service, which will then get fed into the app that you're going to be using.
And the
And that's how
reworked
you-
ATC.
Yeah. Yeah, the ATC has already been done. Let's see. AT. God dang it.
No, I do the same thing. It's fun.
Yeah, so the ATC service and then
rewrite.
the ATC system rewrite. So they created the service and they rewrote the ATC system to utilize the service to make it compatible with server meshing. And that was finished a while back.
Yeah, and remember, all these systems were not supposed to be used in the end of 2022. They were written because they need them for Quanta, for iCache.
Yeah.
So that's why these things are so far done already.
Yeah, these were done a while. Yeah, for exactly that. They thought that, iCache was going to be done and then server meshing would be 6 months later. iCache finishes, around here, and they get to here and like, oh, you know what? That's not going to cut the mustard. And now we're going to do persistent indie streaming. And here we are.
Yep. But the place we're at is not a bad place to be now.
It's a better place.
It was a terrible place to be back 6 months ago, back a year ago. But now that we're here, ooh boy.
So Blizzard asks, if they are done for iCache, do you think they need to be updated for PES? Not done. The systems didn't interface with iCache, but they were hey, they did this along with iCache and this and this and this leading up to server meshing, because server meshing is going to connect to iCache, connect to the other backend services. But it was meant to the timing was in order to, hey, we're finishing iCache, which means we can finish server meshing, so we want to have this done ahead of time.
Yeah.
And they
For
finished it ahead
others,
of time, and then what was iCache ended up having to be persistent indie streaming, so take longer. So just means
for
they got it
other
done
stuff,
in advance.
short answer, yes. Long answer, they're already dead.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of stuff that had been being prepared for 318.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that is, and I'll be updating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the ATC service had to be refactored in order to work with server meshing, because it needs to talk to multiple lots of servers. But it didn't have to be refactored because of iCache, because that's a separate service. The two don't talk to each other.
Pad and transition from his ship to the station. Services like this are always fully operational and accessible to VMPCs. That landing request is logged to his history, though, so while the disabled comm array would make it a bit harder for a bounty hunter to track him, there are lots of other ways by which locational information on a character can be obtained. Dragon needed to refuel and repair his ship, and you can see those actions reflected in his history as he interfaces with the shop service that controls those operations. When a VMPC transitions to a landing zone that's streamed in, the virtual AI service that drives their logic temporarily cedes control of the character to the NPC scheduler that specifies who resides at what location. This is the same foundation upon which the dynamic populations feature will be built, except that it will be quantum instead of the virtual AI service dictating the changes in the population. The end result is that if a VMPC is assigned to a landing zone and you're at that location, you can run into them like any other NPC. Dragon is now hanging out in the local bar, which was added to Port Olisar for the purposes of this demo. If you were to walk into...
So you can't see it in this demo, but I'm over here with that fancy taser we talked about earlier, looking at my Moby glass, saying, yep, that's the guy.
So I don't know if this is the shot. However, if you scroll down on the page into the description.
Oh.
Yeah. Right above the break line. Select gameplay footage captured by morphologist.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was so neat. I don't random tidbit.
Yep.
I thought it was neat. I don't know if that's the shot, one of the shots that he took, but I think that was cool that they were able to take some of his stuff.
It's very cool.
The bar at this moment, he'd be physicalized with the rest of the environment and you'd actually see him there. Dragon eventually gets his fill of entertainment, or maybe he just runs out of money. Either way, it's back to work, and he'll be jetting back to Yellow to try and prey on more unprotected cargo ships. So he contacts air traffic control to get clearance to leave the area and departs. The same player that Dragon first encountered and killed is looking to exact some revenge, though, and claim the big bounty on Dragon's head. They've surmised that there might be a pattern to Dragon's movement and think that he might head back out to Yella. So they position themselves between Port Olisar, where they know that Dragon just left, and Yella and activate a quantum interdiction field. Dragon, still in his lightweight ethereal form, initiates a quantum jump from Port Olisar to Yella and, just like a player, routes that movement through the probability volume service that is responsible for interdictions. Once he gets within range of the player's interdiction bubble, his jump is interrupted, and he transitions from executing virtual AI on the back end to a full-blown subsumption-driven AI executing logic on a server, so that the two of them can battle it out. If the player once again gets the worst of it, they might decide to change up their tactics a bit and wait to see if Dragon soon returns to Port Olisar, where they could try to sneak up on him on foot.
So you can see how all these services feed into Bounty Hunter V2. Well, they mention them here, but you've got the NPC scheduler service, adding and removing the NPCs from the game, just like persistent entity streaming streams entities in and out. The scheduler service streams NPCs in and out of the game based off of whether you are there or not. The virtual AI service is what drives the logic of the virtual AI. When an NPC isn't physicalized, when it isn't in the world, what is it still? It's still doing things. It still exists. It doesn't just disappear. It doesn't go away once it's an AI that has made its mark. Until it's dead and gone. This is the what drives their logic. All the and the virtual AI service. Is that go between the quanta AI and the subsumption AI. The quanta being the ones that you see, all those little dots moving back and forth in that first presentation that Tony Zervek showed us. Those are quanta. But once those quanta, actually have sort of like a meaningful exchange within the game, they become virtual AI. And the virtual AI, still use subsumption-like logic, but they don't perform the visualized functions that we see them. They still have the logic, but they just don't do the server heavy actual AI behaviors. And the tracker service, being what tracks those AI, it basically says, okay, this AI had this encounter in a probability volume, and now it needs to be tracked, and for whatever reason. And that tracker service feeds that information to into bounty hunting gameplay. But you can see where that information might be fed into other aspects of the game, whether it's for hauling or for search and rescue, mercenary work, all that sort of stuff. This is the foundation of it, but there will be more things added to it later on. The security network, basically routes criminal sightings to the back-end communications network. The security network is what the tracker service interfaces with in order to tell you about what the bad people are doing via that app. But yeah, that other than the stuff that we postulated about earlier, as far as the we don't know with Bounty Hunter V2 whether this is how this is going to impact bounty hunter gameplay, as far as if you are in ship combat, how do you get that bounty back to turn in? Is ship combat still going to be ship destroyed, you get bounty, but you have to track down that ship, and so that's the only part that changed? or is the bigger impact not only do you have to track down the NPC, but if you track them down to a FPS location, then you can subdue them. And the other big question that I have is, what does this mean for transporting those subdued NPCs in order to turn them in? Because we go back to the monthly report, production began for the new law and bounty offices, which will be found around the system and will be where bounties can be taken and new bounty missions can be found. So for Bounty Hunter V2, they say the documentation foundation work for Bounty Hunting V2 is nearing completion, which includes bounty drop-offs. So that we will be turning in the bounties. How are we transporting them? Is the gameplay for putting them into the Cuddy Blue, the Anvil Hawk, which variant is of the Avenger is it that has the cells? Are those going to have functionality? How are you going to get them into those cells? Are we going to use tractor beams? Are you just going to drag them next to it and they'll just, stick up into it? And as far as subduing them, will you be able to do it by hand? Will you use volt weapons? Are we getting that taser that we talked about? But yeah, I think my biggest, question alongside that is, if you attack a bounty, an NPC bounty ship, or a player bounty ship, if the ship is destroyed, do you just get the bounty for the kill, or will it spawn, a body, like an incapacitated body, just like the ships can spawn crates? Will it spawn an incapacitated body that then you have to get out, and use a tractor beam in order to track them into your stasis cell, your holding cell? Those are the questions that I have about Bounty Hunter V2. What is the extent of it, considering they talk about bounty drop-offs so prominently here in, the August monthly report for something that is looking, very likely for me to be a Q1 319 release. Nazeris, did you have anything else you wanted to add as far regarding bounty hunting?
There was one more service they did mention, the dynamic
what's that?
population system.
Ooh, good catch. I'm going to pull that up.
That is one of my favorites because it's the thing that gives us the 24-hour, or it's one of the things that helps us get the 24-hour ebb and flow of a landing zone, or a station in this case. So imagine on ArcCorp, you wake up pretty early in the day, or you're just landing early in the day, and there's not a lot of people out. There's some there's some shadier people around. There's a bit more people down the alleyways, but there's overall a lot less people. But as morning rush hour the sun starts to come up in the morning rush hour, there ends up a lot more people are coming out of these buildings and going to work. There's a lot more traffic in the air. And then as you get to kind of that midpoint in the day, it kind of chills out. You have maybe a bit more for the lunch rush, and then it kind of settles again. Then you have the evening rush hour, and then again back to the calm of the evening. And dynamic population is the service or the feature that is the thing controlling it. So the subsumption is the thing that applies each NPC. The dynamic population is the thing that gives the NPCs. So basically, it'll say 50 worker NPCs, 50 business ones, and then they'll execute their subsumption individually.
Yeah. The dynamic population works with the NPC scheduler service in order to make the population in a given area look realistic and behave realistically. Yeah.
And the quantum simulation tells the dynamic population what it should be doing.
Yep. Good point. But yeah, I think that is all we have for this episode. Thank you for joining us, for everyone who is in chat and everyone who is listening in. I said in the description, and I've been recording the entire time. We're hosting the live recordings on my Twitch now. I'm going to be slowly adding more and more things to the OBS in order to give us more just fun little bits and bobs. So if if you enjoy this content, enjoy what we do, join us again. If you are not already a member of my Discord, I've been adding things to my Discord, adding channels, adding functionality in order to help keep everybody appraised of Star Citizen's development and give us a place to discuss things, not only just regarding the podcast. The podcast has its own section and channel for discussion where you can submit questions for us to do things like this on. If you have something you have a burning question about and you want it to be a Spectrum Pulse, let us know. Join my Discord. The link to my Discord is actually on Twitch. And here, I will show you.
Oh, yeah, it is. In the little about Tree0311 bit.
Down here in the About section, as you're watching it live, or even if it's not live, they'll have an About section. And there's a link to my YouTube, takes you right to my YouTube, a link to join my Discord, and a link to my Twitter. Oh man, look at that. It's got window after
It
window after
wiggles.
window after window. Right here. This is the stuff that you want.
Pathfinder
But
reception.
yeah, join the Discord, come chat with Nazeris and I and a bunch of other really interesting people. Have Pathfinders, Pathfinderception. But I will also be, because I recorded this episode, I'll be uploading it to my YouTube, and we'll be working on transitioning previous episodes onto my YouTube as well. So I'll just make a giant Pathfinders playlist, so that way you can reference their videos easily if you have questions. I'm also going to be, Nazeris has a spreadsheet, right? It's a spreadsheet for tracking what each episode had. It's like
A list, not necessarily a spreadsheet.
he has a
Just
list. And so what I'm going to do is I will get a link to that list and I will pin it in our Pathfinder section in my Discord. So that way, if you are looking for a particular episode where we talked about a particular thing, you can use that list. It'll have the links to the episodes as well. Just trying to make everything as functional as possible for everybody who is just out there searching for answers just like us. But yeah, join us, converse with us. And yeah, everything else is.
I had something that I lost it. Not enough. Are we doing? Is the next episode Monday?
Oh yeah. Let's see. I'm not going to pull up my calendar because that has all my wife's work stuff on it.
I mean, we
let's
can
see,
transition
Monday.
back to the talking screen.
Oh yeah, good idea. See, this is why I pay you the big bucks. Yeah.
I'm so happy I get paid the big bucks.
Next it's Thursday, so next episode should be Monday, and we don't have
Anything.
a monthly report or roadmap roundup, so we need to come up with some scanner anomalies and fast. But
And
we
a
will
pulse.
have and another pulse. So between now and Monday, if you got something that you want us to do a deep dive in, join my Discord. You drop Nazeris and I a line. If you've got resources that you want to share them. If you wonder how we get all this information, you can hit us up in there, and we are happy to share it with you, and show you how to go about getting answers a bit easier. And also, when I post this up on my YouTube, the show notes will be in there so you can see everything that we're looking at, the things that we're sort of driving the conversation with, all the links, so that way you can review it for yourself. But that, I think, is about it. And what we need to do, we need to come up with an outro too.
I mean, I have my outro, but
yeah, we need everybody to be kind, but we need to have a Pathfinder themed thing. We'll work on that as well.
we'll workshop it.
Yeah. Well, Naz, it's been fun. I am ready to get to bed. And
I have so much work still to do, so I'm
oh,
not
gosh.
going to bed.
Yeah. I'm headed to bed. But again, thanks for joining us, everybody. And Nazeris, take us away, bud.
And you went mute. Well, thank you everyone for coming. As always, as Trey said, hit us up in Discord or wherever you find us. This should be, hopefully, now that Tree's taking more of a lead on like distribution things, should be better scheduling. But as always, thank you all for watching, and as always, be kind.